All right, team. We're talking 2021 draft in all its glory, infamy, whatever you want to call it. It's a bit of a down year, but that just makes it a little bit more fun for us, right? A lot more discretion, I suppose. We've got about 32 players to rank on this glorious rainy Sunday, as is always the case in Vancouver. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
When
just
does it
how it
not
goes.
rain?
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
supposed to get snow, but no dice. So let's start at number one. And I think that the prohibitive favorite, if I'm reading the room correctly here, is William Eklund, he of Djurgården's fame. Not getting a lot of love in this spot anywhere else, but that's just a testament to the fact that we're smarter than most people. And I do intend on leaving that in the recording. So here's what I've got from Christopher on Eklund. I love Eklund and have for all the years I've been following him, but Christopher warns that he might be getting a bit overrated. He says that in last year's draft, he's not 100% sure that he would even be a top 10 pick, but I think that says more about this year's draft than it does Eklund. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says that he views him as more of a potential middle six player, maybe top six, doesn't see first line upside. He doesn't have elite speed, but he is a good skater when it comes to agility and quickness. Uh, his shot isn't that great. I think Christopher's main thesis here is he doesn't have those sort of overwhelming NHL tools that generally lend themselves to top of the lineup spot in the NHL, but I suppose that makes him different from precisely nobody in this group, which is why William Eklund is, for me anyway, based on the viewings I put in, the number one pick. I mean, like the my theory on this is pretty simple. It's you take some of Kent Johnson's creativity, but you place that in a player who is playing actual hockey as opposed to what Kent Johnson is doing, right? So you get like the best of Johnson and Beniers, and I feel like you can find a lot of that within Eklund's game. Anybody else want to take the floor on this one?
I mean, I have Owen Power as number one, but what I'll say about Eklund that I really like that I can back up what Christopher said was I really thought his two-step quickness is good. I actually think that's one thing that really helps him. And I also think and again, he doesn't get enough of this where he plays, but when guys are on him, he really doesn't cough up the puck. And I like that too.
I like Eklund too. For me, like my top three kind of four could go in any order. I think like have Eklund, Brandt Clark, Beniers, and Johnson kind of all in that area. I wouldn't have Johnson one, but I think there's a conversation to be had about potentially Brandt Clark or Matt Beniers. But for me, like I like Eklund, and I have some of the same concerns Christopher does, but I think that given the talent on the board this year, I feel comfortable with Eklund at one.
Yeah, I think I like Eklund the most here. I don't think it's really a conversation for me. There's a significant gap between Eklund and the rest of the players on this year's list. It's just that I agree with Christopher. His skating isn't all that great. He lacks ankle flexion. He hunches over a bit, so it limits both his acceleration and his speed. But he plays at a super high pace, and I think it's the case for a lot of the Swedish prospects in this draft. So that pace is very projectable, and he manipulates defender. He's deceptive. He has a super large peripheral vision, and I think in his play selection, he always makes the right play. And also, he might be on the smaller side, but it's like Russ said, his puck protection mechanics are very advanced for his age and for playing in a professional league, because he's probably weaker than most, but he still doesn't cough up the puck. So the way he protects the puck, he uses size still. He prepares space to escape every time. He absorbs contact super well, and he uses all the space on the ice. I think he's just really smart. And if you add that to his space and the way he makes decisions, and the fact that he loves to attack inside ice, and the way he can create shots for teammates and for himself, there's just a lot there. I think he would be top 5 in last year's draft for me, at least.
I don't think he'd be up there for me for last year's class. And again, that just speaks to the quality of this draft that we're dealing with. I just don't see those high-end skills that will really make him pop at the next level, which is where I kind of lean with Christopher. I don't think I see a middle six guy. I don't really see a third liner on him. I see a player who's really deceptive. The way he can manipulate, himself and his surroundings to make the right play is really impressive, especially at the SHL level at his age. So I think that's probably for me, like the most impressive skill that he has is his manipulation, his deception on the ice at a young age, playing against men. Like we said, the skating I'd say is going to be about NHL average. The shot's probably going to be the same. But the rest of it, the mind and his play creation, that to me is a top 6 winger, maybe even a pivot too. We'll see how he develops, but he's not top of the board for me, but I think that he's right in that mix. Like Rachel said, is that the top 4 or 5 guys, even, I'll add Jesper Wallstedt into the mix there. That it's really, really fluid. Even, we could talk 7, 8, the whole top 10 is there. We knew coming into this season that there was not going to be a consensus one, even though Atu Rati kind of got that love early on for some reason. It's, we're going to have this discussion right now, and in our next one, we'll probably be talking about the same 4 or 5 guys at number 1, 2, and it'll just keep rolling like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 to 9 is just a 1 tier.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to one team, Department of Scouting, and he's like, there are 8 players fighting for first overall right now, as far as I'm concerned. Which it's kind of like in the NFL when they say, if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you've got none.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same logic applies. Are we comfortable then with Eklund at 1, or is there anybody who wants to make a strong argument for anyone else? I mean, like, I would hear out Brandt Clark, maybe, but I don't know who. Like,
I still for me, I think we're pretty consensus on Eklund at 1, and I like Brandt Clark, and like I definitely think he should be at 2. But yeah, I'm comfortable with Eklund at 1. I would, given the choice, having seen both, I would take Eklund at 1.
I do have Brandt Clark at 1 on my board. Excuse me. But again, like this isn't a fight that I'm really willing to put up and waste too much time on. I really like Brandt Clark. I think that his skill set is as safe as Eklund's, but I think he has a little bit more room to pop at the next level so that he could be a top pairing guy. And I really just enjoy watching him play, probably a little bit more than I enjoy watching Eklund play. I think that there's a lot of fun to his game. If he can add a little more quickness, which I think he's been starting to do over there in Slovakia too, is that before he needed, excuse me, he needed some more runway to do some of the impressive things that he could do. I'm starting to see that. I've watched almost all his games over there this season in a pro league, and you can see the confidence and his ability to kind of jump up into the play is happening more and more. And he's doing it with more quickness, with better acceleration. And it's exactly what we wanted to see. And kind of losing that OHL season, he doesn't get to play against his peers, but he's getting to play against difficult competition, which is really good. And playing against men is never gonna be a problem for him. So I think that this is actually turning out okay because he made the jump early. For me, he's 1, but again, 1 tier for that first top 8 or 9 guys.
If I were to get a show of hands, then I think it's probably safe that we're on Eklund at 1. Yeah. Okay.
I won't raise my hand, but I think the consensus is that.
Yeah, let's go with that then. And like I think we can start at number 2. We can start the conversation with Clark. So I've been watching a fair bit of Clark, and I actually, he's one of the rare prospects in this year's draft where I watch him and I actually get happier with each viewing. Like William Eklund is one of those players where every viewing I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I like this. But Brandt Clark is just improving steadily. And I think like one of the things I like about Brandt Clark is that one of the pathways to improvement for him is so obvious. It's so self-evident. It's like, give the dude some Big Macs and send him to the weight room, right? Because like he's just not strong enough, particularly in his lower body. And I think that's going to add a ton of quickness as he bulks up. I have some concerns about his defensive problem solving, particularly in space. Like I've seen plays where Brandt Clark's brain like just shorts and there are sparks coming out of his ears. He's like that robot who's like cannot compute. And then he's just standing completely stationary while play is happening around him. This really only tends to happen in space and with numbers. But the NHL has space and numbers. So that's my one concern with Brandt Clark is on the defensive side of things. He's not strong enough, which easy to fix, not a long-term concern. But also like when you introduce like multiple variables, he sometimes just completely shorts mentally and doesn't know where to go. And so he stays in no man's land. But I probably watched less of him than Rachel, and I've definitely watched less of him than Cam, who's seen all his Slovak games apparently. So I'm curious what you two have to say about Clark.
Well, like I was just saying, so I think that he's a player who has the upside to be in the top pair. So I think he has offensive instincts. I think, he can, like you said, he's a young player, especially if you're watching his D-1 tape. He's a very young player. And so getting caught in kind of that middle zone where he doesn't make a decision and then he's left flat-footed, that did happen. And I don't think that that's overly surprising from a 16-year-old in the OHL. I haven't seen it this year, but I think his awareness and his overall intelligence on the ice is very high. And I love that in a player. If he was a speed demon, I think he'd be a lock for number one. But I think that his skating has the ability to be stacked up and to improve. Like you said, get some more added strength. The quickness is what I'm seeing this year is really, it's nice to see. I think it's encouraging. I think he can manipulate the puck pretty well too in space. So he can shake and shimmy defenders or forecheckers down low and start that breakout, that transition, either with his feet or with a pass. Things that we like to see from the modern defenseman, right? That he knows when to pinch from the line more often than not. I have seen the hesitation. I saw it a little bit early on in the Slovak league, and now I'm starting to see him be more confident with his decisions there. So he's like, now's the time, and he jumps in right away, or he can see that he's quickly assessing and moving back and falling back into a defensive role. I think he's a really nice two-way defenseman who the skating I think can project to be slightly above NHL average, but the awareness, the edge work, it's all there.
I think for me, like I went into this season, I had Power ahead of Clark. I've seen them both quite a bit. I mean, Brandt Clark plays essentially in my backyard, so like it's very easy for me to see him, and I've always been intrigued by Power. So I came into the year with Power ahead of Clark, but I think I was very surprised at when Clark went over to Slovakia. He had taken steps that I didn't necessarily think he would have taken given the length of break that he had. I think that his defensive game has come quite a bit. And that was something for me where I knew like rushing up in the play, ability to make decisions on offense. He's incredible on the breakout. Like that was never going to be an issue, but I found defensively without the puck, like his off puck play has improved. And I think that for me was something I was really, really looking for. And when we talk about the top of the draft class, I think we want to talk about impact players, because I think we all agree that there's not a ton of high impact players in this draft. And I really think that Brandt Clark, kind of like Cam said, his skating is kind of the knock on him right now. And if he just eats some Nutella and puts some weight on, like I think his skating could really, really pop and probably go up to closer to a 7. And for me, that easily makes him a top pair defenseman in the NHL. And those aren't exactly easy to come by. So I ended up flip-flopping Power and Clark. And it was very much based on the development curve that I've seen from Brandt Clark.
So here's what I would say. I've seen more Power than Clark, obviously, and I've seen Power since like 2018. And I did put a quick note in the grading, because it's when he's playing at Michigan right now, Cam York is going to be the guy driving the bus, and he's just a few feet from the NHL. So there's no way Owen Power could ever beat him out for a job. Neither could Brandt Clark. But what Power does do is pretty amazing. He's only got 2 PIMs in his first 12 games, and he covers a lot of good players, older players. He's been playing up like his whole life, right? He's always playing up in age. When the puck's along the wall, even against stronger players, he is still able to win that battle, push it up, get the puck going the right way. Really good shot, smart. He's got 26 blocks in 12 games. So he's learning how to play that complete, well-rounded game in Michigan. He's grown since 2018. So, now he's the 6'5" guy you have. I think he is an impact guy. I think he is a top pairing guy. There's not a lot wrong with him. There's a lot more that's going to get better, though.
Yeah, my main problem with Clark, Rachel addressed it. It's mostly skating, because right now he has some bad habits to defend a rush. For example, instead of bending his knees, bending his ankles, he does a split. So he just separates his leg like this to try and reach for the puck. And it's a really bad habit, but I think with strength training, it will fix itself. So learn to have a better posture too. So that will be good. But I agree with Chaz that when Power is easier to project to the NHL. We already know what he's going to be. His skating posture is better and all of that. So it's really toss up for me between those two right now. But I think Clark is a bit smarter than Owen Power.
That's fair. The one thing that really impressed me about Clark, and it probably is in the smarts category, is when he is in front of his goalie, he never lets the guy get behind him. He never, and that's a good basketball move too, because that's the only way you should defend. That's how I was taught how to defend, like as a young basketball player. But I noticed that when it's in the crease, he is always making sure he is in front of that guy, and he's very good at doing it with technique because he doesn't have the power yet. When he has the power to do it, it's going to be really hard to do it against them.
You're unusually quiet, Mitch. Well, maybe not unusually, but what are your thoughts on? Because it sounds like we're having a debate right now over Power and Clark at number 2. Unless I'm missing the room here, but I think that's what's happening.
I've got Clark then Beniers.
Yeah,
so I don't like. I have Power at 5.
I've got Clark and then Johnson or Power.
Wow.
We could rattle off 8 names right now.
Yeah. It's true. I put numbers to guys, but I'm with Rachel. I mean, Beniers could go 3 for me. He could go 7, so
yeah, I got Beniers at 3 as well. But again, I've had Owen Power as high as 1, on my working list and as low as 7 sort of thing. So it's, the thing with Owen Power, and I keep having to remind myself, is that, he is a raw rookie playing NCAA hockey, and he's playing a lot of minutes. He is playing behind Cam York, but he's still playing a ton. And I've caught almost every Michigan game too, because it's like, I don't usually get to watch the NCAA because I feel guilty about it because there's never any draft eligibles. And now all of a sudden Michigan's pumping out all these kids and it's great. I have been underwhelmed by him this season. I think that part of that is that because Chicago last year, it was just such an all-star team, right? It's just they could do whatever they wanted, and he got to be this horse, this driver of play. And I loved the way that he anticipated, and he didn't miss too many opportunities because there were so many opportunities, right? There were so many outlet passes to make. There were so many skilled players to work with and bounce off of. And Michigan is also a very offensive, fun team with offensively minded guys, but I see him missing opportunities to skate the puck or make quick, short passes through the neutral zone to get that rush moving. He's more reliant on just kind of a quick to the winger board breakout and off it goes. The shot selection, I've seen him just blasting into pads too often, not being able to move. But the last few games, I've seen him add a little bit of deception to his shot where he does give a little head fake and then kind of moves and changes the angle on it. So he's getting pucks through, or he's getting a shot blocker to bite on him and then sending it over and setting someone up for the 1-time or 2. So I really like to see that from him a little more. And that might just be more comfortable in the league. He's starting to feel it. He's starting to grow and understand what he needs to do against the higher level of competition.
I think that's what it is. On the 16th against Ohio State, that was one of his best games. And that did show a little bit of change in his shot. But I've spoken to, his teammates about him too. And even like a guy like York, who, is pretty worldly for the college scene, and they all see it in him. I expect them to say great things about a teammate, but some of the things the underlying things that they see that he does, those are the kinds of things. Like there are players in other leagues that watch Owen Power. And, I've interviewed a bunch of guys this year, and they all will say when his games are on, they're watching.
With Owen Power, I personally don't think he's comparable to Clark or even Beniers. There are lots of things that I like about Power. I just think that his game is mostly based around movement and length rather than skill. And to me, that's a problem projecting him as sort of this high-end defenseman. He might get used as one in the NHL, but we're not looking for players who are going to fill a role and be bad at it. We're looking for players who are going to be good. And with Power, a lot of his game is based around getting the puck and slowing the game down. Gets the puck, enter a glide, slow down, look for options, and he gets killed in transition. Like he gets picked apart. Statistically, he's one of the worst defensemen on the team after Cam York. So
that's not good.
Yeah, like the fact that he's in a glide all the time really hurts his ability to both separate, process options, and then deliver the puck to his target. With that said, the January 15th game was the best game that he played this season in terms of making plays while moving. And that has to be a key part of his game. It's never been a key part of his game when I've watched him play. And for him to become that really good top pairing guy, he's going to have to fix that. Now, for Beniers, my argument for him at 3 is that I don't think he's going to be a high-end top line guy, but I do think he's one of the best transition players in the draft class, if not the best. He's so manipulative in transition. He's always faking going to the outside lane and then bringing the puck back into the middle. with a lot of these high skill guys, they want to try to beat the defender through their feet or underneath their stick. And that's a low probability play. He doesn't. He moves their feet, gets their stick out of the way, and then keeps the puck on his stick as he walks around them and moves into space. That's a huge translatable skill that I think that should immediately translate, just like how it did for Jack Hughes in the NHL, just like how it will for someone like Rodion Amirov in the NHL. That's something that when they get to the NHL right away, no matter the concerns that surround the rest of their game, they're going to excel at that element. And while I'm not totally convinced about his shooting, I just haven't seen enough of it from him with Michigan. I think he's a really strong offensive zone playmaker, both in transition and in offensive zone play. He sees targets that very few players do. He's not, again, like a guy who's going to rip a bunch of cross-slot feeds constantly. He's more of a scan, get the puck, quickly move it to a teammate who's moving into space and fires off a scoring chance. So I guess there's also the fact that he's the best defensive forward in this draft by probably a decent margin. His habits are incredible. He's always on his man. Okay, we'll get to Svechkov. Don't worry about that. He's always above the play. He even has deception on the defensive end where he sees the lane and he's like, you know what, this is kind of a low leverage situation, so I'm just going to wait to see, and then he just explodes into the lane, grabs the puck, brings it up out of the ice. So I think he's about as close to a top six forward as you're going to get, super high probability in the grand scheme of things. And in a draft where there's probably no guy who's an elite number one or elite top line forward, Matty Beniers is probably the safest bet.
The one thing two things I could add about Beniers, because I've been watching him since the program. When he does skate in the offensive zone, he does create havoc because of the way he cuts. He can cut around 2 or 3 guys, and by the time he does that, it's sort of like a quarterback moving in time and space and finding guys, getting open, and that is a gift that even at the college level doesn't happen a lot with a lot of players, but he does open things up that way. And with faceoffs, he is tremendous. You saw it in the World Juniors. He's winning a lot of faceoffs for Michigan too, and again, playing up in age to doing that. So that's something that is going to be a big thing in the NHL.
Just safety first with him, right? I think that he's probably the safest prospect at the top of this draft. Is that, like Mitch said, he projects as a top 6 guy, but even if the bottom kind of falls out, you're still looking at a highly effective transitional third liner who has great speed and good edge work and can create a little bit of play. Maybe it's the simple play, but that can still translate into some offense too. And so he's 3 for me just because of that, because of, he has all these tools that are slightly above average or about average, but he just projects so well as an NHLer that can, play 15 minutes a night anyway.
So
if you're
in
a GM that's trying to save your job and you're like, I need to get somebody at the top end of this draft, or I'm a GM that I don't necessarily like to swing for a home run, but I want a guy that I know can play, taking Matty Beniers. Because if I'm putting a bet on a player to come out of this draft and be impactful in a certain way, I'm putting it on Beniers just because I think his path to success is so clear cut, and he's already got so many things in terms of maturity in his game that a lot of other players just don't have. His ceiling might not be as high. Now, we don't know if he could pop or not with some development or whatever the case may be, but I think here, could Brandt Clark be a top 2 defenseman? Yes. Could William Eklund be a top end guy? Yes. But I think with Matty Beniers, he's probably a second line center, but is also kind of like a Jean Couturier type of situation where maybe he doesn't pop right away, but once he gets in the league, he's kind of in the conversation for the Selke maybe, and he can also score 30 goals or put up 60 points kind of.
And I'll tell you the difference. I see Couturier all the time. I've been seeing him for years and years and years in the Philly market. He wishes he could skate like Matty Beniers. And he's a good skater.
He also wishes he had more teeth.
Yeah, well, he likes that smile.
But so I think then if we're just to move this along here, we're pretty settled on Clark at number 2 then, correct? Okay, and at number 3, if I'm reading the room correctly, we've got a debate between Beniers, Power, and sorry, y'all, I'm about to blow this wide open. Kent Johnson.
Yes.
Here's why Kent Johnson for me is the next player on the board. David, I'm muting your mic. We're about upside, right? Kent Johnson has upside that Matty Beniers simply does not. And Kent Johnson is playing pond hockey right now. Like, I get it. He plays as if he's in a beer league. And if he continues to play like this, he is going to be a 13th forward and completely fan out. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that his level of creativity is just such a cut above most players in this draft. Like the things that he sees with the puck, the things that he tries to accomplish, like it's effed up. Like there's at least one moment every Michigan game where Kent Johnson does something and I'm just like, I didn't even see that with the benefit of a bird's eye view. Like, how did he? And like I think that counts for a lot, right? Like if we really are the group that values upside, I kind of think that Kent Johnson has to be ahead of Beniers.
Well, I don't think he has more upside. I think, you know what it is? I think when I look at Johnson, he does everything right. But when I see like the great play, I see Beniers setting up Johnson more than Johnson setting up Beniers. That's what I end up seeing. But look, Johnson doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't. He's tremendous and he's cool and he makes great accurate passes. Like I can't rip on the guy. There's nothing to find to rip on him for. I just think he's just, I think he's more boring than Matt Beniers, but that's okay. That's the NHL's got a lot of boring guys that are great.
I really I might sit this one out a little bit because in my 7 viewings in Michigan, I've seen like almost nothing from Kent Johnson. I see a dude who has his hands are the standout element, but he doesn't make a ton of plays in motion. That's really about it. Like as a playmaker, he's the type of guy who just wants to escape pressure constantly and try to put people and try to break some ankles rather than actually find the open teammate and draw attention to himself. His shot isn't particularly exciting, although he does have some really good timing around the net front. I appreciate his defensive game. Like I think it's way ahead of what I saw last year in Trail, BC, which is not a real place, and they play on an outdoor rink. I guarantee it. Book it. And he's just like, I just don't see.
He scored a lacrosse goal in the BCHL. We know that.
He scored 3 of them.
Yeah, so there you go.
I saw too. Okay.
Yeah, I just haven't seen anything from him again. Like to me, he's just hands.
See, like I get KJ's upside. Like I kind of get both. But for me, like I think KJ's upside is probably like that second line skilled player. Whereas I think Beniers he's probably that second line center that you need. So for me, like their ceiling is KJ has like a potentially a little bit of a higher ceiling, but the certainty of that is much lower and the path to get there is much more arduous than Matty Beniers. Yep. Having said that, like I have KJ at 4. So I can't really think that badly of him because I'm a huge fan of the passing and the things that he sees. And I think he's better defensively than some people give him credit for. And so for me, I'm pretty like, if you're getting Johnson or Beniers, like you're pretty happy with it. I think personally, like with Beniers, there's just so much there that like, it's very difficult to ignore.
I like how slippery Johnson is. Like it's insane, but I think he's a bit limited by like his ability not to like, he can't separate as well as some other players I've watched. And it doesn't blend super well with how high effort he is. But I think like, projection wise gets a little faster. It'll be pretty insane. But I like Lysell better than Johnson.
I agree.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. So,
I like Johnson better than Lysell, but I do like Lysell. I do.
It comes down to pace and a bit of skating because Johnson is elusive, but if we compare him to Beniers, when they rush up ice, Beniers will cross over. He only uses crossover, so he sets up his dangles very well because he changes lane. He makes the defenders uncomfortable. Johnson just goes straight at them and tries to dangle them with his hands, and his weight is really locked between his 2 feet, so he doesn't have as much lateral mobility as Beniers, and it's not really skating, but mostly skating habits. And Lysell plays at the highest pace in the draft. His pace is extremely high, stupid high. I think right now the pace at which he plays is probably higher than the NHL at some times during games. and he can make the right plays at that pace. He pressures at that pace. He's very technically skilled too. But I think it's a bit early to talk about him. Maybe we can dive into him a bit later. But I like him better than Johnson. But I agree about Johnson's upside, the creative moves, the hesitation moves, the fakes, and I like his shot better than the Mitch. But it comes down to decision making, skating habits, and all of that. So I'm not sure that all of his skills, all of Johnson's skills, will translate as well to the NHL as someone like Lysel or Beniers with Shamatsu, which is a much better example.
Yeah, David, I think you hit it right there. Is the translatable part for Johnson? Is that what is he going to be able to bring with him effectively to the NHL? And so, he can be slippery. He can do a little mohawk slide down the wall if he's getting pinched out and can evade and be elusive in that regard. But you're right. He takes guys on one-on-one and tries to embarrass them with his hands. And he, definitely could do it in the BC. He's doing it, at times too in the NCAA as a freshman. I think that his vision is very strong too, is that he can create for others and the timing that he can step into those holes and receive and give. Those things will be nice. But, coming down on an NHL veteran defender, you're not going to embarrass him, not with his speed anyway. He's not going to be able to pull that off. So for me, I think Beniers is quite clearly ahead. And, I don't think it's too early to talk about Lysel. Again, we're going to say this all day, is that if we're talking about this top 10, like we can talk about basically 9 or 10 guys right now in any spot. And so for me, like I've got Lysel, I think at number 5. He's the pace, the jersey is always flapping behind him. It doesn't matter if it's 10 seconds into the shift or 40 seconds, like his feet are moving. He's another guy that employs crossovers very well and can add that deception and set up his deeks. And he's doing it against men too. So for me, Johnson's a lot of fun. He makes for some good clips to put on Twitter and get a lot of likes on too. So because people like the things that he's doing out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to be accomplished at the NHL level.
But Lysel's got way more room on the ice than Johnson and Beniers.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's
absolutely.
Not close.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So are we going Beniers at 3 then? Is that where we're at now?
Yeah.
I think so.
Is everyone's following along, right, in the sheet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just writing it down.
So the Beniers at 3 it is. 4 then is 4 between Power and Johnson.
I think you have to go Power. You have to go Power. I mean, Johnson is really good, but Power, he could. I mean, if he weren't on this team, he'd be a top pairing guy.
Yeah, and what?
Basically plays like a top pairing guy though. They give him a ton of minutes. Like
they do give him a ton of minutes. They do.
Yeah. We scrutinize him a lot, but like you kind of have to do that in the top 10. And I think overall though, we can't lose sight of the forest for the trees, right? Like this is still somebody who's got like an unbelievably high floor, right? Like he
might still be growing. He's grown in the last couple of years. So if he grows another inch or two, you never know.
Well, then
at worst, he's probably Tyler Myers, right?
Okay.
Well, that's not exactly.
Oh, man.
Do not draft. Do not draft.
I think he's better than that.
I said at worst. At worst.
Yeah. I know.
He definitely reaches like Myers, like over reliance on his reach.
Someone tweeted me the other day, and I don't know who it was about because, like, I forget. But they said, "Well, his floor is Jack Johnson," and I wanted to reply and be like, "I don't know that I would want a player who's Jack Johnson."
My floor is Jack Johnson.
I'll say one thing about Power in the situation he's in Michigan, where they're so like buttoned up. He can't do some of the passing that he could really do. He used to be able to do that with the steal. You're not going to see that in Michigan until he gets a little older. So I think you'll see more as if he goes another year there. May not, but if he does, you would see him start to do that next year.
So Power at 4.
Okay, then Johnson at 5.
Then Johnson at 5.
I got to start banging the Jesper Wallstad hammer here. Like, do you want a number 1 goaltender, or do you want right? Like, I definitely have Wallstad ahead of Kent Johnson because it's like I see a second line slippery winger versus like a guy who really projects as like a high end starting goaltender. And I'm not worried about what goaltender value is on the market. And can you trade for one? Can you pick one off waivers?
They're voodoo,
if you get one of these kids. Yeah, but I'm a bit of a witch doctor too, right? I got like the pins and working the little guy there. It's like Jesper Wallstad, he's great. Like he is really technically strong for his age, and he's probably not that long a wait to get into the NHL. Like you're not waiting 5-6 years on him. In all likelihood, you're probably waiting 3. he's very, very good. And yeah, he plays for Luleå, and that's a really great team. And he's got a lot of run support that he gets there too. But he makes big stops when he needs to. He's unflappable. His rebound control is strong. I'm not a goaltender expert, but I love this kid. And I think in this class, we talk about Beniers as being a really, really safe player. And that's a reason why we've got him so high up on our board. I think Wallstead, for a goaltender, even, is a very, very safe player. I take him ahead of Johnson quite clearly. If we want to put a tier into that top tier, I think he's.
I mean, if I was a team that needed a goalie, I would. If I was just drafting, I don't think I would.
Well, that's the thing, right? Was that we're not trying to mock it up, though, right? We're not trying to make, because I agree is that, the teams that are going to be picking it for probably aren't going to take a goaltender here. But at the end of the day, are we going to look back and be like, shit, if Carey Price went 15 or something like that, he would have been a lot more valuable at 5 to Montreal, but they didn't need a goalie that year. It just, the nature of a goaltending beast is so unique. And, we dealt with it with Askarov last year too, is that he could have been higher up the board, but that was a much stronger class. You put Askarov in this class, and again, we're talking top 5, right? And
I think Askarov probably won in this class.
Yeah,
I mean, he could. I mean,
yeah,
I think
right
in this class, yeah.
But how far behind is Wallstead than Askarov? I don't think much.
I know, but his coach didn't think that. He could have gotten used more. I'll say this. I have to mention Luke Hughes. Even if everybody here doesn't want to mention Luke Hughes, I mean, the guy has great hockey IQ. He has no problem moving the puck up the ice. He has really good vision, and he's not Jarrett Stahl. I mean, I'm just going to say it like that. And so I think there are some Hughes things that do translate in the family, and I think he's got some of them. And so I do think you have to talk about him because he's succeeded everywhere so far going up the ladder, and I don't see that slowing down.
I think I got Hughes ahead of him too. Yeah.
I think
I got 5.
Is Luke Hughes going to Michigan too?
Of course he is.
Yeah.
Of course he is.
Why did I?
It's a family tradition.
But we have to be fair. Beniers would have been at Harvard, right? He would have been the best player in the ECAC. He'd have twice the amount of points if he wasn't on this super team because of COVID in Michigan, So
fair point.
I don't know. I think I've watched Luke Hughes play probably 8 times now, and I don't think we're in his kind of range yet. For me, I've maybe had 1 or 2 viewings where I came away being yeah, okay, he's pretty good. But then I've had more than a few where I'm what the hell is going on? So I think we need to have I think Luke Hughes is going to end up being a huge discussion. But I think maybe that's after Wallstead, after KJ, and probably after after Lysell. I mean, there's definitely, I would say, a few guys. I would take Oscar Eliasson over Luke Hughes right now. And that's probably a hot take, but for sure I would take KJ, Lysell, Wallstead, definitely Pinelli. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I'm a little lower on Hughes than everybody else.
I really like Luke Hughes. I'm kind of with Russ on this. I think he's one of the best skaters that I've seen in the USHL, in the time that I've been here. And he's able to create a lot with his skating offensively. Like in the offensive zone, he will wheel around and he's got some physical blessings that his brothers didn't get, obviously. So he also is able to play a more physical brand of hockey with the puck as well, kind of shielding off defenders. And I think he's been a real catalyst for that team offensively this year, kind of wheeling around the zone, finding outlets. As Russ mentioned, he's got really great vision and playmaking ability. Granted, like Rachel, I agree with you. There are times that in transition plays, he'll try to force passes or he'll try to do things that kind of just leave you scratching your head. But I like him more than I liked Jake Sanderson last year personally.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll put that out there. That's probably a hot take, but I just think
bold.
His skating and offensive ability is so good that I anticipate as people watch him more, he's going to be a guy who shoots up draft rankings and maybe lands top 5.
Well, and here's the thing too, is that we're talking about in a sea of O2s, he's a late 03, right? He's super young for this crop, and you can see that development. Like, what did he put on? Like 3 inches this past summer too. Is that he's had to adapt and adjust to that too. And that's only, we might be looking at a kid who's 6'3", 6'4" by the end of this too, but he's also going to have to mature and fill into that frame. I really like Luke Hughes too. I'm not sure if I like him more than I like Jake Sanderson last year, but I like him more than Owen Power this year. So for me, I like him ahead of KJ. I like him ahead of Power. I think that he's definitely in the conversation for top 5, top 6. He's another guy that it's a lot of projection, because you can see he has the mind, he has the skating, he's still feeling things out with his new height and the length that he has. And that's going to impact things on both ends of the ice too, right? Like defensively, he's going to have that reach now to use that he didn't always have to use. And he's going to have to find a nice blend to work with that too. And so I think that the step up to Michigan next year is going to be great for him too. Going to that program, the Hughes brothers, he's not the third stall. He does have the genes in him to be a successful NHL. And I think that he could be a really high impactful guy. It's just that we're taking a bit more a leap of faith with how his development will go, and what program he lands in, like who drafts him and who brings him along is going to play a big part in that too. Who's he going to be mentored under? There's a lot to like about him. There's some questions. There could be some doubt too, but I'm with the guys that are high on him. Is that especially recently too, some of his more recent games has kind of lent to that belief too, because there have been some games and Rachel, you're talking about mid-teen sort of thing, is that if you catch some of those bad games or some of those bad shifts, then I could believe it, that you could be looking at and be like, maybe this guy's a number 4 if things work out. But if you see some of the other games there, I think that another one of these guys that has top pairing upside.
He's really come alive for me in the past month. Like in the first viewings that I had of him, even dating back to last year, he was a mess in transition, forced a ton of plays, and then randomly he wouldn't look like he'd have the entire ice open. He would just hammer the puck off the glass like he's Aiden Hershuk or something. So it's really it's really frustrating watching him play at times. And there's also a ton there that he does offensively. Like, I don't think he fully understands how manipulative he can be in transition. I don't think he understands how manipulative he can be activating off the point. It's a matter of finding a way to connect the different pieces of the puzzle here. You need to start stringing together the actions that he does and turn them into something that he's actively thinking about, so then he can stack the odds in his favor as he gets into these dangerous positions. But there have also been a lot of games where, even recently, where I've seen him offensively, and it's like, okay, it's really nice that you're cutting to the slot before you shoot now, but your shot is still really bad because you don't have any lower body control and super upper body dependent. Like, he's just flinging the shot, basically. It looks like he's shooting a ball. It's really interesting to watch. And while he's a playmaker, he looks off his teammates a ton and just steps in. There were a couple games that I watched the other day, and he had 4 chances to set up teammates for cross slot scoring opportunities, and he just feathered a shot on goal.
And this is where I'm with you. I kind of question his decision making from that perspective, because when you're you can clearly see the lanes and you're looking off, but you're looking off teammates to put a low quality shot. That kind of tells me that there's a ton of potential there, but maybe you can't read the game as well as people think you can.
With Hughes specifically, he has access to development resources that most players don't have. His family situation, his brothers, he's with the NTDP. He's going to have so many opportunities to build these links in his game that other players don't have. And again, it'll be really dependent on the development staff that he's under when he gets picked. But I think I've really come to think that he's kind of a middle pairing guy for me, not a best case scenario, but the most likely probability. With scouting, it's all about, it's not he's going to be a top line guy or not. It's about probabilities. And if I'm putting all my marbles under one cup, I'm putting them under the middle pairing guy. Now, with that said, I like him more than I like Owen Power. But this right now, everything's a total disaster compared to the way that I would have the board ranked. So we gotta acquiesce at some point and come together.
Yeah, you know what? I think we've got Power at 4. I think right now the fight is between Johnson and Wallstedt. And then I think Hughes might enter the debate at 6, if I'm reading things correctly.
Yeah, I have Pinelli and Lysell ahead of Hughes. I mean, I have more other people ahead of him too, but I think Johnson and Wellstead, I'm with Cam. I think that Wallstedt has the chance to be a really good starting goaltender, and that might be the best part of this draft, quite frankly. So I'm on board with either order of KJ and Wallstedt.
Let's go with Wallstedt 5, KJ 6 then.
I don't think it's fair to have the KJ 6. We have the same concerns about the KJ and Hughes because we're talking about the same thing. It's decision making. It's being able to translate his skills. So we make the arguments for KJ, but for Hughes, are we all about upside or safeness? I don't think it's clear right now. I'm also a huge Hughes fan. I think some of the things we see as problems right now that I see every game. I really like Hughes, but every game he makes bad decision. He doesn't see teammates. He skates the puck into dead ends. He just does it constantly. But I think that would all improve in a more structured environment too, where he has defined options, where he doesn't play with many players in the US NTDP that can't get open. So I think sometimes he just lacks options. He skates up ice, nobody follows him, and he gets between the wall and a defender on the offensive zone, and then he doesn't know what to do. I think some of that will be alleviated if he gets more clear option, player who can follow him faster. Of course, the decision making will remain. It's going to be a constant problem for him, but he's so agile. I don't think he's that fast, or maybe not even that explosive.
But he knows how to get the puck up the ice. He just, there's an ease to it.
Yeah.
And he's super agile. He manipulates the foreshaker super well. He has the timing, so he knows where pressure is coming from. He can spin off of them, and that's very projectable. Beating F1 is super hard, and he can do it consistently every game. Even if he can't plan the rest and he doesn't know what to do, once he often turns and he beats one guy and then he faces the entire opposing team, and he doesn't freeze, he just continues skating ahead like a deer in headlight. But so there's many problems, but I think we have the same problems with Ken Johnson. So I think he's really in that conversation. Are we more about upside? So we pick a player who could transform into something, or we pick a favorite player? So
I think it's dynamic, right? Like, I think we are like probably more upside oriented, but also with like that little that devil on the other shoulder, I suppose. If I were to, I don't know, kind of try and formulate whatever our philosophy is. I think Luke Hughes, I've seen a lot of those same things where like he beats the F1 cleanly, he skates up ice, and then next thing you know, it's him against the world, and he doesn't quite know what to do at that point. Planning. Like he stops moving mentally and goes along the wall, and he gets rubbed out. And that happens like every other shift.
I think that's fair, JD, but I also say like kind of what like Mitch talked about, like the trajectory, especially in the last month. I feel personally like that's something he's getting better at. Like
not skating into pressure.
Yeah, like I think he like, and I will say like it's probably a little bit of like recency bias, but I've seen in like the games he's played in January that like he's starting to kind of create more options for himself, like using his skating, like, you know, he'll make the cross ice pass, kind of suckering in pressure and moving it the other way. Like I've just seen glimpses of it that I think like will only continue to kind of develop and pan out as he goes to Michigan. Like David, I kind of get what you're saying about the skating, but I also think it kind of like Russ said, he's really smooth, and there's an ease with his skating that part of which kind of stems from like watching him. Part of it's kind of his size. Like maybe he doesn't look like he's going nearly as fast as he is, but I think he's an efficient skater. Like I made kind of the hot take with Sanderson. I think he transitions the puck a lot, and he plays with a lot more pace than Jake Sanderson. And in the offensive zone, I think he's kind of like I think his vision's getting better, and in terms of kind of delegating to teammates and figuring out where his options are, that's something that I've seen progress in.
In my viewings, he's been like so uber aggressive. I haven't watched him recently, but he would like step up right in the neutral zone to halt rushes and stuff, but instead of guiding pretty much. And, you know, he has the mobility to recover and everything, but I see him like he's more like a power game instead of like a methodical game like his brother, like, which I found interesting. And I saw a lot of the you know, a lot of like just not seeing pass options on his rush attempts as well.
So one more thing about his skating, I rated it as a 6.5 or 7. So I really think he's a great skater, and he has a clear path to improvement. So it's his limbs bend the right angle and everything. I just think right now he kicks his feet, but it's probably a thing with growing so fast in a year. So I think it will fix itself, and I don't have any issues. Just I think he's really more agile than anything else. So the way he gets his outside edge under him and spins off, I think it's the best characteristic. But I don't mean that he lacks speed or explosiveness. And yes, I agree with Daniel about his defensive game. I think it can be problematic. We talked about being capable of understanding and seeing more than one variable in the defensive zone, and he can't do that. So one-on-one defense, it's not so bad, but he has problems if he has to repair mistakes and all of that. He can't do that like Sanderson, but he has other things that Sanderson doesn't have in transition and offensively.
Yeah,
And he's
the
weak
NTDP
physically.
has an issue with over aggression on the back end though.
Yeah,
like that could be something that I could see kind of dialing down as he goes to Michigan, because like there are a lot of NTDP defensemen who have issues kind of getting outside the dots a little bit too early and playing over aggressive.
Actually, Joey makes a great point, because in Michigan, you take too many penalties, your ice time gets cut.
Right.
Yep.
Well, let's let's do a show of hands then, for the sake of expedition. Expediency, that's the word I was looking for. It's too early for this.
Go exploring though.
Yeah. Expedition. God, I am a dumbass. Kent Johnson, show of hands. 3. Okay. Luke Hughes, show of hands.
I don't like this.
On both.
Neither do I.
I really don't.
I
like
don't think
this.
it should be either. Like, I think we need to be having the conversation about Pinelli and Lysell if we're going to be having the conversation about Hughes, because I know Cam has him pretty high up. Russ is pretty high on him. I'm pretty high on him.
I got Lysell 5, so I agree.
Like, I think we need to be adding.
I don't have enough on Lysell, but I loved what I've seen. I will say that. He's going to move up on my list. I just don't have him in the right spot right now, because I need to see more, just because I need to see more games of him.
Yeah, like I think we kind of had, the only reason we had the Luke Hughes conversation is because Russ brought him up, but like I think that we're still having the conversation about like Lysell and Wallstead and Johnson and Pinelli before we even like got to Hughes. And we haven't even discussed a few of those players. So I think we've got to have
bring them in, discuss them.
So do we have a
Bring them out.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so
so-
Pinelli for me, like I think he's so high ceiling, and I know like a lot of you haven't seen his skating, and I have the luxury of being able to show up to a hockey rink and see it. But for me, like he sees the ice so well. Like he consistently makes everybody he plays with better. A constant scoring chance creation. He's a literal menace. And I've spoken to a few players that have played against him. I've spoken to more than a fair share of coaches, and they all say like when they're playing him, like you got a game plan for him, because if you don't, he is going to make you look very stupid. And so for me, like his skating's really come along. And when you mesh that with the vision that he has and the ability to make plays that he has, I know Lauren and I have talked about him at length, and we both really, really love him. We were actually having the conversation about whether we liked him over Ken Johnson, and I ended up with Johnson just ahead. But for me, like I think Pinelli's ceiling is so high. Like I think he could be a top line player, depending on the program he ends up with. And for me, if we're talking about upside, the ceiling for him is just so difficult to ignore because of his ability to identify the play, B, problem solve to figure out what the best play is, and C, he actually has the ability to make the play.
He's amazing. I really, really like him. Of course, we only have the season, last season to go on, but everything I saw from him, he's super smart. He might be the smartest player in the draft. I rated his hockey sense. I think I gave him an 8, so that would make him the smartest player in the draft for me, but it's close. Of course, we need more games on him. But everything Rachel said, I saw too. So his off-puck game, he has pinpoint timing and support, both in transition and in the offensive zone. So he comes in at the right time to get the puck. He was great routes to support too. He has a super great understanding of spacing. So hiding behind defenders, using the wide of the ice and all of that. He makes a lot of east-west movements to manipulate the feet of defenders. He everything he does screams of planning. He knows what's going to happen, and he knows what position he needs to be in to make the best play possible. Of course, sometimes he didn't play a lot in games. He didn't get into a rhythm, but you could see it in the games where he played more. So he's not dynamic at all. He floats a lot away from the play, and he doesn't skate much. But when he does skate, I think his limbs bend at the right angle. So I think his skating will improve, and he will be able to use that at more. His actual skating pace isn't all that great, but his mental pace, he can make great plays and do it very fast. So I don't have any concern there. And he's deceptive, manipulative, he uses teammates. He has pretty much everything you want in a high pick.
I hate his pace.
I
hate it. It's just like, it literally reminds me of Brendan Gaunce. He's just out there just scanning everything. Feet aren't moving. Yeah, Brendan Gaunce, magnificent junior player, right? Because he had the time and space, just not kid. Great brain. And I think Pinelli has it too. And that's why I just keep harassing Rachel to like get out the spy cam and let's roll. Like, I want to see this kid skating on the ice out in the pond, getting over those bumps and twigs and stuff. But no, I really like Pinelli. I like a lot of things that he does. I think, David and Rachel hit it on the head, is that, his mental pace, his ability to process is very good. It's quick, but his feet just don't move very often. And then it's kind of a lumbering stride too. When he's getting going, he's got a bit of that back hunch, and he's chugging along when it's like he doesn't have anywhere to be. He's like, I'll get there at my own time.
He's 16 though.
But I know he's 16, and we only have this draft -1 tape to look at. And so that is a big asterisk in trying to assess him. And it just adds to the challenges this year, because, I've got him outside of the top 10. But if you show me a couple of games where his skating is improved, then yeah, I wouldn't have any problem having this conversation with him as a top 6 guy, because a top 6 in the class, not as a top 6 winger, because he does have a lot of those skills that you look for in a high pick.
We've gone over Kent Johnson's warts. We've gone over Luke Hughes' warts. And I think with Pinelli, like, there are less warts than those two players. And like, while yes, like skating is an issue, we have seen, like, I personally have seen improvement, but like, we have seen that skating has the ability to be improved, whereas decision making is insanely more difficult to, one, measure, and two, actually figure out an improvement plan. And so for me, when we're looking at upside and warts, which I think is like super important to look at, Pinelli has the greatest upside, I think, of all of them potentially, with the exception of Johnson. I think it's neck and neck there, but he definitely has the least amount of warts of all of them. And certainly the most fixable ones, at least for my money. Like, the kid's, he's really young, obviously he's still growing and developing. So naturally, like, I'm not even the skater I was when I was 16 that I am now. Like, you're going to develop and he's going to grow. And so similar to how Joey and Russ have seen kind of Luke Hughes improve, I think that with Pinelli, the decisions we like are already there, and his ability to actually execute on those decisions are already there. And so for me, like, the skating is very fixable. And if you've already seen improvement, then I don't think there's any reason that his warts or his one wart should have him below guys that we think have 2 or 3.
So executive power here. I think we've got 2 very strong regional endorsements from Rachel in Pinelli's corner, from Joey, who covers the USHL, in Hughes's corner, with ample support on both sides. Now, if we were to look at the future value grades as kind of the, the one thing that tips the scales here, I think the most reasonable outcome based on this conversation is one that lends itself to a Pinelli spot at 6, Johnson at 7, and I think Hughes at 8. Because if we let Hughes fall any further, then we would run the risk of, well, basically ignoring Joey's work, which also
Joey and I would filibuster at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't even know what that means, but yeah, looking at the value shares, I could
put it that way.
Yeah, and
I'm
Joey's
okay as long as he stays in the top 10.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
I just think he's a
ample
top 10
support too. Like, Russ is on board with Hughes. I think Mitch is on board with Hughes. Cam is on board with Hughes. Like, I think we can comfortably go Pinelli, Johnson, Hughes in these next 3 spots.
Yeah. And then
from there,
We got to get
Lysell.
Lysell has
we
to
gotta
be
get
9.
Lysell in there.
Lysell's so fearless, like it's insane.
Watching that AJHL tape, like Dylan Günther could not be less bothered if he tried. Like, it's
Yeah, I see that
hilarious.
too.
I've never seen somebody so obviously, so thoroughly disinterested. And
He
you know
looks
what's
like he doesn't like hockey. Like,
Yeah.
which, to be
No,
fair,
you
like,
know what I would say? I'll give you a
AJHL will do
comparison.
that.
I'll give you a comparison though. Like there's things to like about Günther, obviously.
Oh yeah,
He
for
reminds
sure.
me of Jeff Kent. Jeff Kent was a great ball player, but it was a job for him, and he would talk about it like a job. And I think that's probably the way Günther looks at hockey.
Although
Like that's
He
what he's
reminds me
good
of
at, so he
Toffoli.
does it.
he didn't
He-
look
he-
like
Yeah,
he played
I can see that,
hockey
Dale.
in,
Like
in
floats
Edmonton.
around, randomly pops into the slot, wide open. Like it's just so Toffoli to me.
And then one every 4 games, you like dangle someone at full pace and then gets inside.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a second, can he do
You
this
can
more
do
often?
that?
Oh no,
Yeah.
he can't do that more often. Nah.
I just
I
like
think-
if there was a stopwatch and you were tracking how often Dylan Günther is like straight legged,
hmm
you would get like 75% of his ice time where he's just completely straight legged and just
It's
like
way better than WHL though. It's like
Oh,
65%.
yeah. His give up meter with the Oil Kings is like exponentially higher, which is why I'm not like writing him off, right? Because
Okay,
like
let's
last
just-
year,
can we-
that's a major character flaw. Like that's a major issue.
but
I'm not gonna try
you know
if
what-
I'm only playing for this team. Like that's not a great sign.
okay, it's not. But hear me out. He gave a damn when he had to play with Jake Neighbors.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
At Sherwood
this is-
Park, he can like put up like a 50% effort and just put up 4 points, and it seems like everyone's happy there about it, right? Like, but it's interesting to hear that it's completely different story in the WHL.
he's a
And
driver with the Oil Kings. Like he drove that line last year.
He's very different in the way that like he's not like the puck carrying play driver as more as he is just always an option and ensures that his comparatively low skill teammates have low skill plays available to them for him to get the puck and move up the ice. He's an off puck guy. Like that's what he does. It's get the puck, get it in motion, offload it, stay in motion. But if you're lazy, you can't play that game in the NHL because then you're not moving your feet through your passes. You're not moving them through the pass receptions. And especially when you're Dylan Günther, who lacks ankle flexion, he's not a particularly strong skater, you're going to have a lot more difficulty finding those pockets of space when you're always gliding and never in motion. And so that's something that he's going to have to figure out. And with Günther, it gets particularly problematic because he doesn't really have a delay game or any sort of playmaking game to find the trailer or to find the guy inside after he gains the zone. So he's just leaning on that outside leg wrister, which is fantastic because that's an NHL shot right there. But he doesn't have any other ways that he can penetrate the inside or use his teammates. Personally, I think we're in Günther's range because that off puck skill is so impactful. Like he can score 30 goals and provide a little bit of value elsewhere. But I do wonder if we need to start talking about Simon Edvinsson right now, who even though I very much dislike his game, I think he's got a ton of tools that he could become quite the player.
Strong Broberg vibes with Edvinsson.
Yeah, 100%.
Like very strong Broberg vibes.
He's so aggressive. Like
really? No, I really feel like I watched a different player from you guys because I had the bad viewings.
He overextends so often. Like no structure. He plays it in my viewings. He played with like absolutely no structure, chased constantly, and then like he just has like he's an average skater. So he can't recover quite well. The question is decision making, everything. But I would say that if he was a little more developed physically at his size, a lot of the stuff he was trying probably would have worked. Like going for open ice hits and just getting destroyed the other way.
I'll beat the table for Atu Ratti at this point too.
Well, actually, I was going to say one thing about Simon though. I do think he gets into the flow of the game well. He's got a very accurate shot, and even though his skating may not be what you like, when he goes from one side to the other and he's sort of like cutting across the grain like a running back, he does it pretty quick, and he can get from one side to the other and get things and get a play going. And I think that is valuable too.
I think he's clumsy in his backwards like crossover, like not like, but yeah, like he has a lot. His projection is so high though, like.
It is.
Christopher kind of his like abridged notes on Edvinsson are like, you know, the too long don't read is extreme Broberg vibes as well. You know, like, which
really man,
like if you told me a few years ago that I would have a player in contention for top 10 with Broberg vibes, I would say that draft class is the one that they should push back to have a 19-year-old draft. But here we are.
I feel like we're kind of at the point right now with the pandemic where it's the NHL has a golden opportunity to push the draft back, and nobody seems to want to listen. So
no, it's being talked about.
They always flirt with it, but they never make any headway.
But it's like, this is your golden opportunity. No one has seen pretty much like 3/4 of these kids because they can't play, and so like it's your golden opportunity. Just be like, all right, we're pushing back the draft.
What they could do is push it back, have the first couple of rounds be for 18-year-olds, and then say, all right, from this point forward, we're only having 19-year-old drafts. Now the 19-year-old draft starts, and that's how it's going to be forever. They could do that.
I prefer the 18-year-old draft, but like I think just because the 19-year-old draft just lets so many bad scouts like off the hook, you know. But
I don't think that's the reason though.
It kind of does, because they're always like, well, they're so underdeveloped, you know, and it's like, well, I don't know. It's
I think it's good though to get that extra growth out of players. That's what I think it's good for.
I'd agree with that, but then you don't get like, well, I guess if you mixed it, I don't know. This is.
I think they had the opportunity to mix it, and that's why I would do it for sure.
I will fight for Atu Ratty at 10. I want Ratty.
Yeah, I would fight him there. I would fight for him there too.
I want him in the top 10.
I
don't think that there's enough reason.
Too.
He's
I also think we're getting into Eliasson and Svozil territory, because like I started watching Svozil at the World Juniors, and then I was like, oh, this is very curious. So I went back and watched a bunch of tape, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is a defenseman I really like.
He was so awesome last year as a draft -1. He, you know, rookie of the year over there in the top league. Like, he's a player. He's a really nice player. I think that there's a lot of upside there without a lot of elite tools. He's just one of these guys that you love to watch. Like, and there's not a lot in this class where he's like, this guy makes the right decision a lot of the time.
I legitimately think like that is a top 4 defenseman. Like, he might not be a top 2 defenseman. Like, his ceiling might not be that high. But if you say like, okay, you're getting a top 4 defenseman, like I would take that all day. Top 4 defenseman that can, like, he's good in transition, he makes good puck decisions. Like, for me, I would take that all day.
Do you guys like him more than Edvinsson?
I have Edvinsson's upside as being higher, and so that puts him ahead on my list. So like I've got Svozil at 14 and Edvinsson at 10 on my board. It's funny. I've seen both sides of Edvinsson. I've seen that where you're like, ooh, look at this guy at 6'4". He can wheel. He's got the physical gifts, but he really doesn't have, like, his game planning out there is lost. And that's where I get those Philip Broberg feels for him too, is that he can do a lot of things to clean up his messes, his routes defensively that he takes, you know, when he gets turned, because his backward pivoting isn't all that great. He gets turned around and all of a sudden he's in a foot race with a guy, and he has such great long strides that he can clean up that mess at the level that he's been playing at. But the routes that he's taking to angled players, I don't like. The decisions that he makes sometimes with his rush patterns, I don't like. But then other times you see him drive and cut hard and work the middle of the ice and get back and eliminate threats quickly and efficiently with his stick. So I get where some people see him as like, you know, this guy could be the number 2 or number 3 pick in the draft because you're projecting him so high as being a guy that can play on a top pair and be physical and have offense. But then at the other side of the coin, it's like, is he going to have the brain and the quick reaction time and decision making to get there and to be that type of player? So for me, I think he's another guy.
I don't think he's Joni Peekinen. Joni Peekinen didn't have the brain. He liked Megadeth and all that, and I appreciated that, but.
I've seen his
plus
brain,
for Megadeth.
Yeah. So is it then?
I didn't mean
basically...
we need to dispose down now. I just mean we're approaching that. I'm with Cam. Like, I have Ratu at 10, and I think I have Edvinsson ahead of Svozil, but for me, like, we're definitely rapidly approaching that territory.
For sure, for sure. I think like right now it's probably between Gunter and Edvinsson, but for 11-12, I probably side with Gunther because I love that wrist
Yeah, I
shot.
would side with Gunther.
Like, just imagine if he learns how to shoot off of his left foot.
Need some in stride
Does he-
from him.
Yeah.
Well, let's see him stride a little bit more.
Yeah. But we need to see him
But, you know-
stride first.
But you know what? He
I
would
wish-
a little bit more in the WHL. He definitely did more last year.
Yeah.
I wish I clipped it, but the best ankle flexion I've ever seen him take was the one in stride wrister he took last year that I saw. That was the best ankle flexion he had. It was finally knees over toes. It was amazing. One time thing, apparently.
And then he tapped out on that.
Yeah.
So let's go
I mean, I think-
Gunther Edvinsson then.
I think we're getting into Chaz Lucius territory.
Yeah,
soon.
we are. Should be
We're getting
definitely
to a lot of
territory.
We
players.
should be right around there.
Mhm.
David, we need to mute you. I'm sorry. Anytime we talk about Lucius, you're out of the conversation, man. I'm sorry.
Let's just put him down right now. Lucius at 13.
I saw
thought
your
you
grades,
meant
man.
put
I saw your
David
grades.
down
We
now.
ain't
I
having
was
that.
like, Cam, we don't need to euthanize David for Christ's sakes. That's a little extreme.
You got to make
It's
the
all
hard
right, it's
decisions.
all right.
Let's hear out Lucius. Let's get our noted TikTok and USHL correspondent Joey Padmanabhan on the tape.
Wait, is Joey TikTok famous? Or did I miss this?
No.
He's just really
I-
young. He's just really young.
I was like,
Not sure where that was coming from. I honestly, I'm a little mixed on Lucius. I'll probably defer to Russ and Cam to kind of bang on the table for him. Like I think he obviously, like, the offense is what stands out. I think he's got a really great release on his shot. He's got, he drives play in the offensive zone, and he's a really good playmaker. I have some kind of questions about his defensive ability sometimes.
Fair, yeah.
I just, and there are times where off the puck, I don't see him really supporting his teammates, especially well. I honestly, I kind of went back and forth, and don't hate me for this, but I really liked Pastujov.
Awesome.
There were times where I watched him and I was like, he's like the best forward on this team. Just because I saw kind of a little more two-way game and a little more, I guess, dynamic ability out of him than I did Lucius. But I'll let Russ and Cam kind of.
I'll just give three quick things. I love the hands around the net. I love how decisive he is if he gets on a break and has a chance to make a play. He never really ever hesitates or doesn't think about it for a second. And he does create a lot of opportunities for his teammates in the offensive zone. There's no question about it. Yeah, that's it. Those are the big points for me.
I thought he processed really quickly in my viewings, but he attacked into pressure way too much. It was like a bunch of turnovers from that. But I don't have a super strong opinion on him either way, because I don't think I saw many of his good games.
He's not a great skater either. I don't.
But he does get behind you're right. He's not like a terrific skater, but I noticed there are plays that he can get behind the defense easily. Now maybe he's got a sneaky factor to him, but you're right. He's not a tremendous skater yet. That's true.
But Joey, you like Pastujov, and that kid can't skate at all.
Worse.
Like you're right.
Yeah,
He's far worse a skater.
But the difference is Pastujov can at least, like, I think he has the ability to kind of power through checks and kind of skate through. I don't think Pastujov like he's able to at least kind of put himself over his skates so he can absorb kind of contact and make plays through pressure, I thought.
Yeah, I like Lucius's his battle level too. Is I think that he can work the corners and come out of the puck more often than not. That he's strong on his stick and he can lift pucks and he can take abuse down low too. I think he's a much better skater than Pastujov. I think that he's probably about NHL average and maybe even above. I've had a few viewings. Just the last couple of weeks, I think I watched 5 games of Lucius just because I wanted to. There's a lot of talk on the Slack, and obviously we haven't got to see him this year. But so for those viewings, I really like a lot of what he was doing. One of them, it was kind of like, oh, that's not so great. But again, these are all from 10 to 12 months ago. So it's really difficult to know exactly and we don't even know the severity of the injury that's keeping him out right now. So there's another layer to that too, but I think his shot is great. I think he adds deception to it. He can change the angle. That shot looks like an NHL shot to me, and that's as a draft -1 player. So I'm a big fan of that. I think his play creation too. I think he has good vision and that he can set it up, with that mind. Defensively, I don't think you're paying for a defensive player when you're selecting him, but I think that he has the motor. He has the compete level to be adequate. And I've said this on with you guys a bunch and in public too, is that I think to be a strong defensive player, you need to be smart, you need to be hardworking. And I think he has both those tendencies.
I think Lucius has NHL scoring ability, like pretty clear cut. It's not just like the wrist shot and the angle changing stuff, but like his instincts around the net are really strong. He has really good timing. He engages, he controls contact with the defender. He gets inside of them, then pushes them away to time for a deflection or a spin around chance. And his 2-touch shot is the best in the draft. And it's not even close. His ability to take a puck off the backhand, put it right into his own wheelhouse and fire away is incredible. It would instantly be a high-end NHL shot. I have no doubt about that. For me, Lucius is the easy choice here.
I agree. And I think like Joey brought up Sasha Pastujov, and I think like even if we look at our ratings, like he's still pretty far down there. And I haven't seen a ton of Chaz Lucius. I think maybe I've seen like 3 games, but I've come away every time thinking like there's most certainly translatable NHL tools here. And I think in this draft class, if you can say that about a player, like that's a player that probably belongs pretty high up on the list. And I think with Chaz Lucius, he's got at least a few translatable NHL tools.
I will say I completely agree with Cam. Like the shot's so impressive. It's kind of on a different plane, and his touch around the net. Like he's got great quick hands and really good decision making, like in tight. He reacts to things really well. I had him as like from my region, the best forward. I like Sasha a lot, but I'd be comfortable having him here.
Well, why do you?
Are we gonna let David
him?
voice his grievances?
Yeah, why do you hate
muted him,
David?
I don't really hate Lucius.
Why do you
Actually,
personally hate him and wish nothing but ill omens on him?
No draft. No, really, I watched a bit more of his games this weekend. I kind of see it. He doesn't do a lot necessarily in games, but there's the off-puck movement that Mitch talked about. I really like his release, and he can veil his plays. So there's a bit of everything in this game, actually. It's just that he doesn't do it consistently. So, but he's a year younger when we watch him. So you have to take that into consideration. He's really all projection. But I like his anticipation. I think he's pretty smart. So I would be even comfortable having him ahead of Günther. So I really have no problem with him there.
Did you ever see, like, I had a couple of viewings where kind of offensively, like, I know you talked about his off-puck movement, but I saw a couple of times where he was like almost crowding guys.
Yeah.
And he didn't really, he looked kind of like a deer in the headlights, like he didn't know where to go. Did you have any?
I think it was more a strength for me than a weakness, but again, he doesn't do it consistently. So when I watch these 16-year-olds, I just take the things players do inconsistently and put them more as strength than I would a 17-year-old, because I think he would improve with a year in the league, a year more in the league. But yeah, it's pretty low. We talked about Sasha, but Lucius is also pretty low pace. He floats a lot. His decision making is inconsistent. I really like it, Pastujov, but I don't think it's his spot yet. But he's really smart. I think off puck is even smarter than Lucius. He finds open spaces. He has to, because he doesn't skate. So the only thing that's left for him is floating in the right spot. But yeah, I'm really unsure with Lucius. So I'll just leave it to the room.
So I mean, that's the nicest thing David said about anybody today, which is, I'm not sure.
No, he said he agreed with me like twice. I mean, that's something.
Damn,
Like Pinelli.
I'm not that bad.
Yeah, he likes Pinelli.
Yeah,
that's true. So
one name long draft board.
Yeah. So I guess Chaz Lucius steps in at 13. I think we are in Olausson,
Svozil.
Yeah, I really like
Sveshkov. This is Sveshkov's territory. I don't know if any of you watched him, but he belongs in the top 15. I'm gonna fight for it.
None of us like to watch the MHL as much as you do, David.
I don't know why they like you so much because it literally looks like it's filmed on a potato.
It got a bit better in last year, I think.
You're right. It's now a regular potato as opposed
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
a sweet potato.
Yeah.
It takes you 5 minutes to figure out who's actually good, and then you can figure out how the person's playing amongst these players. It takes a little while.
But what I like
Better
about
than
the
some
NHL is that,
WHL stuff.
yeah, and the NHL, you can just throw a player in the garbage easily because they can't skate and they're small and they have no pace. So it's very easy to do that. But when I talk about Sveshkov, I think he's maybe not the best defensive player in the draft, but close because there's been years. His defensive game is super advanced. Believe me, for the MHL and the VHL, it's incredible. I've never seen that. He supports players super well. He comes back on defense, rotates eyes, shoulder checks every time. He's always in the right position, and he has offensive skills too. So his tools aren't top end, but they are maybe slightly above average. And he uses deception. He's super manipulative in the MHL game. It hasn't translated to the VHL, but it's probably coming because he's 17 years old. What, Mitch? I see you making a face.
I object. It is definitely translated to the VHL. The three
I haven't
games
seen
that
it as much.
the 3 games that I stayed up late last night to watch his VHL games, like it looked really good in the VHL for like a 17-year-old playing against men for the first time.
Are
Like,
you
he was
suggesting that David is being harsh on somebody, unduly
Yeah.
harsh?
Specifically
Also, like-
in the MHL, are you suggesting that David might be a little harsh?
Yeah, no, I think he's really manipulative. Like, he's in the VHL, he looks about as manipulative as a lot of these kids do in the USHL. Like, it's not every shift or anything, but he's using hesitation moves and changes of pace to bait sticks and go around them. He's really good at immediately cutting off their hands. And like, to David's point, like his defensive game, like I just want to shake his hand after every game. Like, he's so good defensively. Like, it's just such a commendable effort that you just don't get in that league. Like, it's incredible. I really like watching him play. I think David's onto something here.
Yeah, I think not necessarily at this spot, but we have to have him in the top 15 because
he's in this conversation for sure. Like Svozale, Ullison, Scott Morrow, yeah, it's a really good name here. And Cole Sillinger are all kind of like in this little tier for me personally.
And it's not just his defensive game. His puck protection mechanics is not strong, but he has body positioning. He has a feel for pressure, and he's a playmaker too. He can attract defensive pressure, open up teammates. He does everything, not consistently in my viewings, but he does a bit of everything. Not super great tools, but it's NHL average or more. So he's almost pro ready for the KHL at least.
Yeah.
So one thing I have to say, he goes in the recycling bin, whereas the rest go in the trash.
Yeah, exactly.
The one thing I have to say about Morrow is when you're living in Connecticut, you have to have a defensive posture. And so that's why a lot of good defensemen come from Connecticut. Just saying.
I
really like Morrow
and
too.
A team with one of the best logos in sporting history, the Whalers. We stand. What about Svozile? Like I've got such a soft spot for his game. Like he takes such good care of the puck. He's so sharp. Like transitionally, I love watching what he does, the way he breaks down a forecheck. Like I don't know if I've ever seen like a standout offensive tool from Svozile. I'm not sure. Not in any of my viewings, but like in terms of the basis for a strong defensive and transitional game, like it's all there. It's all there. And Rachel is also on the Svozile hype train and probably has more viewings in. So I'll just defer and let her be the Svozile hype beast.
Yeah, like I have Eliasson and Svozile at the next kind of spots here. And I think with Svozile, like you kind of mentioned, I haven't seen like elite offensive tools, but what I have seen and kind of like where the NHL is going more towards is that transitional kind of defenseman that they're not necessarily excellent in the offensive zone and they're not excellent in the defensive zone, but they're really good in all areas of the ice. And so he's not going to be like a 1-2 guy, but I think for me, he's going to be that modern day NHL defenseman that breaks the puck out really well, consistently making good decisions, defends with a good gap in transition, has the ability to do the quick regroup or can slow the game down. Like I just think he has that ability to really kind of control the pace of the game in transition. And that's something that's going to be super important at the NHL level. And like, he might not score, but he could certainly facilitate. And for me, being able to facilitate in transition and giving your forwards the ability and the support to be able to go forward, I think is going to be a huge part of NHL success in the future. And I really see that with him.
Yeah, he's a terrific facilitator, like both in terms of starting the rush and joining it. Like his rush activation habits are really good. He always seems to find an open lane, a perfect pocket without ever introducing too much risk. And offensively, I've seen flashes of it. Like, I don't think it's going to be a huge component of his game, but I think in terms of skill, he belongs here. He really likes this stepping off the point, look off at a shot, and then slip pass it to the open teammate. I've seen him do that like 4 or 5 times now. And I think that's a pretty projectable NHL play. You see it almost every game nowadays. So I think that's something that he can build a little bit of offense around, and hopefully he can get a little bit more active in the next few months and start showing us that offense more consistently.
I'm all aboard. He's 14 for my list, so it'd be perfect to put him here right now. I think he's just a really safe player.
14
Nice.
for Sozil. And then it's Olausson and Morrow, I believe. Yes.
Carson Lambos.
I'm so down.
I think
on
Lambos needs to be here too. He's
And
still
Chekhov,
I think he's still a player. I still think he's a player. Like, you know, the love that we had for him last year, it's probably not that easy to move to Finland and adjust and play well. And he doesn't, the offensive game isn't there. He's playing PP2. I see the knocks with Lambos. I see the kind of the disparity between what we saw last year and what we're seeing this year. But I don't think he's like a guy who's going to fall out of our top round, right? Like, I still feel like he's a top 20 prospect in this draft. I think so too. I think so too. Like, where do I got Morrow? I got Morrow at 18. So I got them 17, 18.
Morrow's going to get better too.
Lambos just like frustrates
me
sure. So damn much.
But he definitely will.
But like, we're watching Morrow against prep school competition, right? So he can do a lot. I know, of course, but like, he can do a ton of stuff against that level of competition right now. That, you know, it's gonna be interesting to see if he can do that at the next level. But I'm a big Scott Morrow fan. Like, I don't even know if I trust chat there. He's a lot of fun.
I do trust North Dakota a little bit with their defensemen, like, so that's a good thing too.
But
Absolutely.
when I watched Morrow in the USHL last year, I think as a defensive game was pretty good for a 16-year-old playing in his first 2 games in the USHL. It's quite impressive. Of course, everything wasn't perfect, but the defensive game was there. It was trying plays. They weren't working all the time, but it was trying them, and it almost worked. He just needed a bit more refined timing and all of that. So I have no concern about him translating his game to college. I don't know about the NHL, but I think he has the better package of skill, the manipulation, all of that is better than Lambos.
Yeah, and the thing with Lambos too is just like how overwhelmingly frustrating he is for me, because it's like I feel like I'm that. Remember the LeBron meme where he's yelling at J.R. Smith? Like, you know, that's me with Lambos every shift, because he's taking these low percentage shots into people's shin pads after he'll shift east to create space west. He'll have an open teammate right there for the one-timer, and then he just shoots it into somebody's shin pads. It's like, why did you shift into this space? Like, why did you create this passing lane only to not use it? Like, why are you this way? Why do you do the things you do?
Yeah, I found he'll randomly be moving the puck between the dotted lines, and then sometimes he just takes it right out to the boards and instantly into pressure and a turnover. I feel like he wants to facilitate fast offense, but then it leads to like poor decisions and suboptimal plays. But yeah, like very frustrating to watch.
He sags so much in the neutral zone. Like, he sags like all the way to like the face-off dots by the time that the opposition have reached like the blue line. It's just I see the talent too. Like, I love his shot, but I just like, maybe I've only maybe it's a sampling issue, because I probably have seen far less of Lambos than certainly everybody here, and like I get that. That could be the difference, but I've just walked away from like every Lambos viewing being like, what happened to you, my dude? Like, you seem to have regressed from your draft -1. This is not good.
It's never a good thing when a player regresses from their draft -1 year. Like, to me, that's concerning. And I think less so this year because gestures broadly at the world. like anyone can be forgiven for perhaps regressing a little bit because in certain circumstances you can't be on the ice, you can't be in the weight room, you can't be doing certain things. So like I think maybe there's a little bit there, but I would expect that more from players who aren't playing at all. Like I would have expected that maybe from Brandt Clarke a little bit, to watch him struggle, and I haven't really seen that. So with Carson, I've kind of had questions of like, okay, what is going on here, and why is the regression so much more pronounced than perhaps other players?
I think when you go into like, I'm sure you've all seen it now, like the player report that I filed that after I had just watched 6 or 7 games. And then he really tanked for me after that. And to me, he had 2 good months as a D-1. He was really good in Jan, and he was really good almost up until the end of February. And the rest of the season, he struggled mightily with everything that JD and all of you have talked about. I like his game. I think that he's steady and he's going to play in the NHL. I think that there's a real probability that he's just a number 5. And he has the offensive capability for a lot more. He can activate off the point. He can create a lot of offense from his shot. The difficulty is that when you have a guy who doesn't have a ton of lateral mobility or quickness out of a stop, how much can he create in the NHL by being reliant on that as his tool, right? So he's a really tricky projection for me personally. I've watched a ton of his games, and every single time I watch more, I just come back with more questions. And I guess that's why we're doing this meeting in January and not June, right? But
Yeah.
he's a tricky one to figure out.
You seem to like Lambos more than some of us here, Cam. What are you seeing that kind of moves the needle for you?
Here's the thing. I haven't watched him since I think I mid-November. And so I've talked to some scouts who have been watching him recently, and the reports that I was getting back were not all that glowing either. So I saw some of his early games over there, and I thought, he was getting top power play billing. I actually liked some of his lateral movements offensively. He was getting his shot through. But again, there was always kind of at the end of my game, my notes, I would say, but still not what I was expecting after last year. And so again, now Mitch, maybe that was a sampling for me because I don't spend a ton of time on D-1 tape, except for this year, is that maybe I was catching some of his great performances in that 2-3 month stretch too, where it kind of raised my expectations. So a part of me thinks that player is still in there and that he needs to have it brought out. And so we are still talking about an 18-year or 17-year-old who's working his way into a new situation, a new, country, language, the rink size, the whole 9, right? But I think that his shot is there. I think that his offense should be there too. My big concerns are, we've talked about it. The skating is average. His ability to assess and make offensive zone plays and passes, that can leave something to be desired. And some of the offensive awareness in general. I think defensively, he looks like a player to me that can play in the NHL and make stops. And so maybe that's a number 5, like Mitch is saying. Maybe that's as a number 4, as kind of a passenger on a second pair. But this is just such a strange class, is that if he continues down the path that he's taking right now, I don't like him at 16. But if he can find kind of a middle balance or regain some of his form, is that I want to believe that there's something more there. But again, as from some of the reports I was getting in some of his games recently here in January after the break, he hasn't figured it out recently too. So again, that kind of bumps him down. I think that he's still around 20, on this board, because I only really like about 20 guys on this list anyway. But yeah, I'm not gonna fight tooth and nail for him at 16. I just think that he's in this zone. I'll fight harder for Simone Robertson at this spot than I will for him though.
We put Morrow down at 16 on the chart.
Yeah.
I think Svechkov, like David, made a pretty compelling case there. And
I'd have a
Svechkov is
ahead
fine.
of Morrow.
He's got translatable skills too.
What were you saying, David?
I'd put Svechkov ahead of Morrow. I'd have him there at 16. I don't know if Mitch agrees.
I would have him over Morrow too, but I would also have the WHL ranking that we have right now quite different. So we're not going to get everything we want.
But that does sound like it's trending towards Svechkov ahead of Morrow then.
We did lose a big Morrow voice though in Russ, and so we need to make sure we adjust for that.
Yeah, that's
And we
fair.
talked about Cole Sillinger when I lost power there. Did we mention Cole Sillinger?
9.
Because I think he should be in this
Yeah.
conversation too,
I
right?
think
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
close to Brennan Offman as well. Like I have Sillinger and Offman kind of basically neck and neck.
Well, let's go Moro Sveshkov then. So we've got that clear break, and then we can start breaking into a new group here with I think like I'm with Cam. I think Lambos, like as much as he frustrates the hell out of me, is probably still like top 20 in this class because what a year, folks.
So specifically with like Lambos, those 2 months, like he looked like a Brant Clark challenger. Like that was how good he was. He looked better defensively than Brant Clark did. Obviously, that's tapered off a little bit. He was not the same playmaker, but his hands had a little bit more exciting flash to them, and the shot, obviously. Now, obviously, they're not close anymore, but just to give you an idea of like where I'm anchored to with Lambos, like those are my first real viewings of Lambos, and I was like, holy cow, this dude's a slam dunk top 5 pick. And so I don't want to adjust too much now on dropping Lambos just because I don't want it to be like, oh, well, it's expectation that has led to me tanking him rather than some sort of thing that's grounded in reality.
That's fair. But Cam, you were feeling the Simone Robertson vibes.
Yeah, I am, and same with Cole Sillinger. I think that two different players. Simone Robertson, he to me, like, you know, if you can go watch 10 of his games and it'll take you 15 minutes from the SHL because he's getting no ice time. But when he's out there, he's doing some stuff. Like he you know, if we can compare it to like Podkolzin in the KHL where he's seeing no minutes, but when he's out there, he's impacting the game in a positive way. And I like the routes he takes. I like his crossover heavy stride. I think he's quick to pucks. He's hard on the boards, and then when he does have it, he's not panicking. He's assessing. He's quickly making nice outlet passes. He's making plays through the neutral zone. We don't get to see that offense at the top level. You got to go back to the J20 to see that. And I don't think he has dynamic skill. I don't think he's going to be a kid that's going to play on a first line. I think he's probably more of a middle six player, but you know, at this level in this draft, he screams NHL to me. And so I like that. And I'm not, you know, a middle six player who can impact the game on both sides. I like him a lot. He's one of my favorites in this class.
Also,
really like
there's
him.
also going to get the dad, like the bloodline bump. So we also like, I think
In
Cole
hockey?
Sillinger is going to get more chances than some other players because of the bloodline thing. And we've seen that. And I've actually kind of looked at that for my masters a little bit, and it is legitimately a thing.
Yeah, Elias Anderson, though, I mean, that one was all merit, just so we're clear, going to the team with that employs his father.
I really like Sillinger.
I like Sillinger too. Yeah.
I like Sillinger more than
Sillinger better.
Lambos.
In my viewings, the USHL viewings I had, like his effort was like top notch. Like obviously his skating, like he lacks a lot of depth in his stride, but he was just like he was racing on retrievals. He's like the curl and drag king, basically. Like curl and drags basically every shot he takes. But you know, he was like making huge defensive stops in my viewings, like great back pressure and off puck support. Like I really liked him.
Yeah, Sillinger is just he has the potential to be such a, I guess, a dual threat in the NHL. The curl and drag shot, he's got a really significant angle change, and then he shows some offensive manipulation as a playmaker where he draws in a defender, gets the other guy to look over, and then throws the pass back straight through them to an open teammate. The skating is a problem, but when I look at his game, I think he has all the tools to overcome it. Again, the deception, the manipulation, the ability to use his teammates, work, give and goes, find off pocket or off puck pockets of space. You know, these are all the things that I look for when I'm looking for skating deficiencies. You know, how can they overcome it if the skating doesn't improve? I think he's got it. And honestly, I really like him as sort of this second or third line scorer who can bring a ton of defensive value, provided he continues to improve his defensive reads and scanning habits.
His pace is really high, yeah. And I saw manipulation too, like constant throughout my viewings.
Yeah, that January 15th game I think I watched in the USHL was just, it was hilarious. Like it was bigger than I expected for putting a WHLer in the USHL. Like that game was, this kid does not belong here at all. But are we cool with Sillinger over Lambos in that case? Because that's how I have them ranked. So
is it
okay,
Sillinger, Robertson, and then Lambos?
Oh,
Well,
I would disagree
I have
on that.
Offman over Robertson.
Osman over Robertson, okay.
Yeah, like
I
have
agree with that.
Offman at 18, so like this is right his range for me. I've spoken to 3 players he's played against in Switzerland. And they all say like he is, if not the most difficult, one of the most difficult players to play against in that league. And it has nothing to do with like him being a man, because he's literally still a child. But it's how he moves the puck. It's how he skates. It's his puck protection skills I've seen improved leaps and bounds. And I mean, we all know that he can shoot the puck. But for me, like, getting an endorsement from players who actually play against him and say, no, like this kid, like it's the real deal. And they say that a lot of times he uses his eyes, which like we wouldn't get to see on video. He uses his eyes, and that really throws defensemen off in terms of passing lanes to protect, because he'll look off players and find other people, or he'll look off the shot and still be able to find the pass. And so I think in the games I've watched, I've noticed like his passing game is very good. And for me, getting that, just being able to have those conversations with players that say like he's very deceptive to play against, especially at the speed he plays at, that's definitely a step forward in development for me.
I agree with all of that. I really like Ottman in my viewings. His spot protection is pretty advanced. He's super aware of options and escape routes, and he plays at a high pace too. So I like his shot. So I would have him ahead of Robertson.
So in that case, let me just double check here. Sillinger, Othman, Lambos, Robertson. Yeah, let's do that.
I won't fight. It's fine. Yeah, they're all basically in the same tier for me. So they're all.
And we can't forget about Isaac Rosen.
Rosen. Yeah, he's right. Yeah, he's right there for me too.
I like him more than
was it
Robertson.
Lambos at 21? He was the last of those four.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Rosen, I really like his face too, which is a common trend for my players. It seems he's manipulative and yeah, it's very. I like his reaction time when he gets the puck. He can make quick angles to keep it even under pressure. He uses space. That's also a problem at the SHL level, because I find he stays on the periphery a bit, but he's very good at using space, coming back in the slot at the right times too. And I didn't like his defensive game at all in the G20 league. But when he came up to the SHL, he made second efforts on defense, good rotations, even covered for defensemen in the defensive zone really well, and he plays his check closely. So he tried much harder, and he's pretty skilled too.
Okay, so
I think he's probably the next guy up. Yeah.
Yeah, we have two players left in this tier because we bumped up Othman and Simo Robertson. We have Rosine and Samoskevich.
Yeah,
those are the last two players in this grouping. So
hit him up.
I'm cooling a tiny bit on Samoskevich.
Yeah,
I'm the opposite.
Really?
Yeah, I was really disappointed when I first watched him this year. I got like 4 early viewings in, and then my last 4 have all been fantastic. Like, I think in terms of pure skill, he's one of the best players in the draft class. Incredibly manipulative. His hands are fantastic. His habits are really strong too. Like, he's not just dangling through someone, he's setting them up by working one way, then going the other, and then he immediately skates back into the recovery route. So they have no chance of getting the puck back off him. And from there, he's really comfortable playing under pressure. Lots of tremendous passing plays from him, obviously, but he just like makes everything happen with the defender on his back or with the defender in front of him, because he just burns them. And he does it in a way that's, to me, projectable to the NHL. He's going to have more adjustment than I think a lot of players that we've ranked higher up will, but he's far and away the most talented player left on the board, in my opinion.
And he's super aware of space too. He's always checking to see where the defender is. So when he gets the puck, he knows what he has to do. And that's super projectable because he's not that good of a skater. He has no balance at all. So he can't resist contact. But if he's aware of space, he knows what's coming. So yeah, but he avoids it more than he gets killed.
Yeah, that's what kind of stood out to me in my viewings and was a little bit concerning to me, is like he's kind of like
he's gonna get
teetering on the brink like constantly, and like like he's got good enough hands that he can, you know, sometimes he gets away by kind of like just having a quick move through a defender or through like the defensive triangle. But the skating was kind of an issue for me personally. Like I had him a lot later.
He's not William Nylander, obviously, but William Nylander is the same type of player who's just like, his game is just built around getting into these little tiny pockets of the defender where he gets inside of them, nudges them away, and then he gets body positioning on them. Yeah, William Nylander, he's an inside player, guys. You heard it here. And you know, he's
at front goals last year. but
Yeah,
only plays on the perimeter, which makes it very difficult to score goals from the net front.
Hold up,
Yeah,
hold
for
up.
real,
Are
like-
you telling me the Leafs shouldn't trade William Nylander for Gord Gordmanson, seventh defenseman?
Yes.
6'8".
Yeah, 6'8", Gord Gordmanson.
Well, you have a Vancouver fan that suggested that they should trade Tyler Myers for him, to which I said absolutely not.
Honestly, so it was a real trade then, basically, JD.
Yeah. I've divined
yeah,
one thing in my life. This.
I think like Sam Moskevich, he does like there are obviously the frustrating elements, but I really believe that it's gonna work at the next level for him. There are so many layers. There's so much deception. He has some of the best offensive habits in the draft class. I understand the concerns. Like I'm not disputing anyone's evaluation here. I just weigh things a little bit differently. That's all. At the end of the day, it's all definitions, right? And I just to me, he's the clear cut next most skilled player. So I gotta go for bad for him here. English
So
is
are we
hard.
going Samoskevich then Rosen?
Flipped.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah, and like
Rosen
you know,
and-
like Mason McTavish, I think we should be talking about too.
Yeah.
and Ty
I liked
Ty
him last
Voigt.
year.
Yeah.
Voigt.
I don't know if
almost again.
He goes, yeah. Roll those. Yeah.
So Rosine Samoskevich.
Joey, are you fine with Mackey there, or is that something?
I mean, I think Mitch made good points about I think his hands are great. I think he's a good playmaker and he sees the ice well in the offensive zone. But I don't know. I thought the skating was so glaring for me. I had him like a lot farther down, kind of on my list. I had some other people kind of ahead of him. Like obviously I trust your judgment if you think that you feel strongly that he translates to the NHL, but I wouldn't say he's not my guy. I wouldn't advocate for him.
Yeah, we could have a Voigt and McTavish ahead of him. I haven't watched most of those guys that much, but I like Voigt's pace again, and he's manipulative. He makes plays at a super high pace. His skating's projectable too because it's high end. McTavish doesn't have the same skating ability, but he's like a moving tower who can make short passes and reposition into space, score net front. I like his release. So I don't know if Rachel probably has more to say about those guys.
Yeah, I know like Lauren and I had McTavish is probably the player we've talked the most about apart from Brent Clark, and Lauren is higher on him than I am, but we are both in firm agreement that Mason McTavish is better than Ty Voigt. Like that we most certainly agree on. I just think more of what McTavish does is projectable. I think that his ceiling is a little bit higher, and I also think his floor is higher. So for at least Lauren and I, we've got McTavish. We like his ability to score. I like his net front's presence as well. Lauren's a huge fan of it. So for us, we have Ty Voigt behind. Actually, I believe we have him behind Brett Harrison as well. So we have McTavish and Harrison ahead of Ty Voigt.
I really like how McTavish has never taken an extra stride or crossover. That dude perfectly maps out every route that he's going to take and never expends extra energy. It's amazing to watch. I really enjoy that part of his game, but also like he shoots the puck powerfully, to put it mildly. His quick release wrister is like a slap shot for most kids in the OHL. It's really interesting to watch. And I honestly really believe in his skating. Like his shin angle is really good. He kind of skates funny because he doesn't have the strength or the consistency to get his hips into a stride, but he has the ankle flexion. So he's a bit top heavy and can be kind of pushed off the puck easily. But I think as he gets stronger, he has the base to have an above NHL average stride for sure. I personally think McTavish is slightly better than Voigt, but I like Voigt more than I like Harrison.
Yeah, I agree
Same
with
here.
that. Yeah,
I'm,
I like McTavish. I like McTavish higher than this even. So I think at 23, I think he's a guy we should be getting in there.
Yeah, let's make it happen then.
So let's do McTavish. We have not put Samoskevich down yet.
I'm curious. Has anybody else seen Mackey and has like thoughts on him?
I'm aligned with Mitch, but I've already said my part about Mackey.
Yeah, I had Mackey going on a little bit later. But
I have him going later too. There's just something about him that just like seems like it's going to be difficult for him to translate it up with the skating.
yeah,
But you know, he does have a lot of skills that I like, and so those, especially at this level.
oh,
Here's one thing I really like about Samoskevich that I will give him credit for. He's really creative. You know,
yeah,
like he can see some pretty exceptional things out there, and execute on them sometimes.
He's also playing with some great players, and seen Farrell and
true.
Coronado. I mean, for the USHL, actually.
Yeah.
I don't mean those guys will necessarily become super great NHLers, but he has a ton of
Right.
support there. So if he wants to make a play, it's there because they know how to position. They know they have an offensive structure with the steal, so it's super easy for him. But I think that the decision making, the awareness of space, the creativity, that will all translate quite well. But he's not he's a late first rounder for me because there's definite concerns about his skating, his low pace of game too. And sometimes the decision making isn't all that great too. I've seen games where he just throws pucks away, skates into dead ends, and all of that. So
he's got a pretty sluggish first touch, at least in some of my viewings too. I've found like a really tough time with catch and release shots at points. I
like his release.
I like his release, but I think his first touch, like I don't know, maybe it's just a sampling issue. In fact, it almost certainly is because I haven't seen enough 2021. But I've just been like, why is this guy struggling so much to get a clean first touch? You know,
I think he has one of the best first touches in the class. Like he's the type of player who will take like a bouncing puck on the backhand and one touch it between a defenseman's legs, get around the corner, and then burst up the ice. For me, the frustrating part of his game is his playmaking. As David kind of alluded to here, he throws pucks away. He's the kind of player who he has these really good habits where he'll look, and then for whatever reason, sometimes he'll come in and then he'll just stop looking. The time between him looking and then doing the look off is way too long. Like he loses so much information. The longer you wait between your look off, you know, there's obviously opportunity cost because the earlier you set your look off, the easier it is to deceive, but also the less information you have available to you for when you go to make the pass. And he very much leans on the deception over the looking at his target part of the equation, which is a problem. It's just that's the big thing for me. Like statistically, in my data set, he's turned out as more of a shooter than a passer, not because he's shooting the puck more than he's passing, but because he doesn't generate a ton of quality looks for his teammates that they can convert into shots, because it often seems like his last resort is, oh, I'm just going to pass the puck now and hope that someone is kicking in around the slot. You know, like the Jack Hughes with the NTDP thing where he beats a guy and then he's like, okay, the play now, throw the puck in the slot and hope someone gets it. And that's a massive problem going forward. And obviously, Samoskevich doesn't have the pace or the skating of Jack Hughes amongst literally everything else. But I really think
like amongst all the things.
yeah. But I think like I believe in his game so much. Like the details that he has offensively are among the very best in the draft class. It's just a matter of improving the skating, I think. And of course the passing, but I think that's a lot easier than to teach a player how to revamp the way that they manipulate players defensively.
It is. Has anyone who's seen Samoskevich also seen Brett Harrison and Ty Voigt have an opinion? Because like I know Lauren and I are pretty much in agreement that Harrison belongs ahead of Voigt, but I haven't seen Samoskevich enough to have an opinion. So if anyone has an opinion on where he kind of goes amongst those three, like I'd love to hear it because I've only seen Voigt and Harrison enough to have an opinion.
It's like flip a coin for me between Voigt and Samoskevich. I think I'd probably lean Samoskevich personally, but it's difference is marginal with Harrison. I haven't seen enough of intriguing NHL qualities from him. I think he's decent at a lot of different categories and doesn't really stick out at any of them. To me, he screams more of like a later first or an early second in this group. But someone else might have a stronger opinion in there.
I've seen a bit of Harrison, but my notes aren't all that elaborate. So I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign. I just got a bad viewing that happens. Between Voigt and Samoskevich, I could flip them. I don't really care, honestly. But I just think Mackey is a first runner. I don't really care where we put him. But I think he's the smartest player left and the most creative and more skilled. So I would have him there.
Like I'm
yeah,
comfortable with Samaskevich, then Harrison, then Voigt. But I just think that like if both Lauren and I in the OHL are kind of comfortable with Harrison over Voigt, like that might have something there. So like I'm curious, maybe like if other people want to really hop on those two and so we can get some other opinions. But I don't know why Lauren and I are both in agreement there, but I know that we are.
That's probably a good sign. We could have him around
I
here.
say we just go through those three in that order, unless Joey has any super strong objections about having Mackey here after these arguments.
No, after hearing you and David speak on it, I think I'm fine having Mackey there. Like I said, he jumped quite a bit on my list, but the only other thing I was thinking, like, I sometimes have some problems with like his rush patterns, kind of when he comes in on the wing and then he like pulls up. Like I know Mitch, you kind of said like lower, he'll try to throw it into the slot, but sometimes he'll pull up like inside the blue line or top of the circles and he'll just throw it into the middle. Like he just, there won't be a clear target a lot of the times. And a lot of the times, like he'll be kind of, throwing a hope pass to the middle and play turns the other way. And I saw that quite a few times in my viewings of him. It's like, there's some problematic stuff when he's not trying to do it himself. But you guys both seem in alignment on that. And, I trust your judgment. So if we want to have Mackey there, that's fine. It'll be interesting to see how I'll keep an eye on him, especially as we go forward.
We could have a Shibrikov ahead of him too. He's all projection, but he shows some interesting elements both at the VHL level and at the MHL level. He's a better skater than Mackey. His skating habits are better. He changes speed, uses waving patterns. He leans against defenders to create space in tight spaces. And he's adaptable. He can change his play. His skating has the 90-degree knee bend, the ankle flexion. He has some playmaking skills too. The only issue with Shibrikov is that he goes long stretches without showing anything. So I tend to like Samaskevich more, but there's a ton of elements. You could really boom this Shibrikov, but right now I'm not comfortable pushing him too much ahead. But he's definitely a first rounder and probably the next player even.
Yeah, Chibrikov is so opportunist. Like in all my viewings, like he'll jump on loose pucks and all of a sudden it's a 2-on-1 or a breakaway. Like, I really like his brush patterns. He times stop ups really well on his rush attempts, like to get shots off. I think a good example is his first KHL goal. Like laterally, he's great. I don't think he handles physical pressure very well, but that's kind of a common theme across all kind of junior Russian players for the most part. I do see like a slight hop in his crossover, kind of like he's like stepping up on stairs, but his pace is so good that it kind of overwhelms that deficiency. And I think he closes space really well, but he's a bit timid defensively.
What do you guys think?
I know Cam liked Chibrikov too.
You can go there.
I'm at the point where I just have to be deferential because I'm pretty behind on viewings. Like, the Samaskevich thing, it's like I've only got 2 or 3 viewings in on him, and one of them November 21st, just fighting the puck like crazy, and then Mitch is like, actually no, he does that thing exceptionally well. So I think that's my cue to just be like, let's let the wisdom of the crowd have it.
Well, I'm also working on only
the math have it, right? Like we're having conversations about Samaskevich, Chibrikov, Harrison, Voigt, like they're all pretty much in the same future value. So like I say, why don't we just defer and say like, okay, Samaskevich 24, and then we go Harrison, Voigt, and Chibrikov. Like I think they're all kind of pretty much in this area.
Yeah.
The future value checks out. It checks out. Zachary Leroux.
Hey. We need to start talking about Trevor Wong too. I know he's 5'8". I know he scored 14 points last year, but this dude is dynamic. He has all the skills to play in the NHL at his size. He's fast. He uses contact really well. He has the potential to become an above average skater because of his base. It's just a matter of getting stronger and building his mechanics out more consistently. He doesn't overwork the defensive triangle. He deceives defenders really well in deception, going one way, going the other, really good crossover use, lots of manipulation ability, dual threat potential. It's a projection and a half, or it's like 3 projections. You are projecting a projection of a projection with this kid. but I truly believe that he's a long-term potential top 6 player. Just emphasis on the long term.
I agree. I've seen a bit of him, and he's really dynamic. I'm not sure between him and Lure. Honestly, it's because we haven't seen a draft season of Wong, so he's very dynamic. Yeah. He plays with a lot of pace. Yeah, like you said, in terms of contact, right now he's really small and he can get killed. Almost died a couple of times in that season, but he has deception. He makes plays really quick, and he has all the skills you want in a small player. So it's really a toss up for me. The only players I have left on my list that are in consideration for a first round are Lurler and maybe Poltapov, who's another MHLer, rated more as a B. So I don't know.
We're not going to get to Red Savage, are we? I like Red Savage.
We might. I really like him actually.
In the first round?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a little high?
Yeah, I think it's a very high.
I like Duke more than I like Savage. Savage is just like you get him and you're like, this is JJP discount version.
Yeah.
I think we need to get past the
rated so highly in future value.
I don't know, but I really like Peter Reynolds. He's an awesome defensive player, really good habits, strong playmaker. It's just he doesn't really mesh with the Sea Dogs. You know, the Sea Dogs don't like the defensive zone. He likes the defensive zone. It's just it hasn't really worked offensively for him a lot of the time. But I'm a big believer in his game. His habits are really, really strong, really refined player. He's kind of like a discount Svechkov in the sense that he's got these strong habits. He's not quite as purely skilled. I don't know if he's entirely in the first round for me. I think Dean's a little bit better if we're talking about the Q, and LaRue's definitely better, but he's worth some discussion at some point anyway. Just I don't think that'll be today.
And Joey brought up Sasha Pastujov. I'm again too low on my viewings. I'll defer. But what does the class think about that one?
I think
he's
really
a no-pace, slow-moving shooter, and his shooting dimension is fantastic. And I wouldn't say he's a bruiser, but like he has the potential to just be in your face, annoying, outworking you all the time. I honestly have no idea what his game in the NHL looks like, but he scores a lot of goals, and a lot of them are projectable goals. It's not like he's just beating players with a slightly above average shot. He's hammering the puck past them. He's finding pockets of space. He's getting to the inside. So I would have a few of the guys that we've talked about over him here, just because I see their game in the NHL a little bit easier. But he should be in our top 32, I think.
Okay. Mitch, I wouldn't say he's no pace. I think he plays with a little bit. I think he's got some
okay.
He's not the fastest skater. He needs a little more explosiveness on his stride, but I think it's good enough. I think the skating's good enough for what he does. And I also think he's a really good playmaker. I think he's got good hands. I think he identifies targets really well. He runs the half wall and the power play extremely well. I really like Sasha Pastujov, and I think he's a first rounder.
I have not seen the playmaking at all at 5-on-5 personally, but I'll defer to you on that one. Again, like it looks good on the power play, right? And so surely it's there at 5-on-5. I just haven't seen it because sampling issues and so on. He's maybe he's not a no pace guy, but I think he's a low pace guy for sure. It's just he has the tools though to be like as you said, because of how good he is with his body, even though he doesn't have the lower body mechanics, he's going to be overpowering, I think, no matter where he plays. And he's going to work guys no matter where he plays. So to me, that does give me some reason to believe. And also, he's an off puck guy. You don't expect him to get the puck, go end to end, and then cut into the slot and fire. He's going to find the pockets of space and bully someone and then get the puck and put it in the net.
And I've seen all three of Wong, Lure, and Pastujov, and I had them in that order, but Pastujov, I tried to fit him in my first round, but since I hadn't talked with anyone else that I really liked them, I wasn't super confident. But now that Joey has endorsed them, I like him. I also think with Mitch that he has no pace to his game. I don't see him skating. I don't see him floating, but I've seen the puck protection. I've seen the playmaking too. He makes quick passes. And he identifies target quite fast, and he has some deception. I really like his off puck game. He's super smart about finding open spaces, and he connects plays very well in transition. So he doesn't want to skate. So every time he gets the puck in between blue lines, he just bounces it to a teammate and then repositions inside space. That's very projectable. So we could have him there. I wouldn't mind at all because I don't like River that much. I think he's a first runner and Wong too, but any order is fine with me.
Yeah, those are great points
with,
on Pasta.
With LaRue specifically, like he's the ultimate plays on his inside edges player. He's always got this super wide stance when he's handling the puck out in front of him, always just gliding around, trying to, because he lacks ankle flexion, he tries to compensate by leveraging players just by basically doing the splits everywhere on the ice. It's not going to work in the NHL, but he's also, how do I put his physicality nicely? He's trying to kill people a lot of the time, and he is an exceptionally dirty player. There are plays that went uncalled where he is basically taking out someone's knee like 4 or 5 seconds after they pass the puck. He's a killer out there, but he also has some instincts. His game is mostly built around driving the net. So obviously you don't expect him to be like an outside lane net drive Pavel Bure guy in the NHL. No one is that player other than McDavid, really. But you do see enough from him from like he can freeze defenders, he can make quick passes. It's just a matter of trying to expand the situations that he puts himself in, because offensively, when he doesn't know what to do, it's go wide on the defender and then try to drive to the net. And even in the queue, it fails quite frequently. Sometimes it's not necessarily in the offensive zone, it's in transition and so on. But I think he does have that unique physicality plus scoring plus playmaking combination that, well, it might be hard to bring that in its entirety into the NHL. Some of it will surely translate.
Maybe kind of like a
more
low rent Max Jones. Or high
Yeah.
rent, maybe? I don't know. One of the two.
Yeah.
So, like, I think, like, Zachary Leroux has a nice profile as, like, a third line
Yeah, for sure.
guy, maybe? Like, how do we rate
line
these
wing.
next 3 prospects, then? Because it's Wong, Leroux, and Pastajov. And no, you cannot make fun of my pronunciation, David. I'm trying.
Well, Wong definitely has the highest upside, but like his road is like it is some
I would
kind of
take
walk.
Wong over the guy who spits on people in a pandemic, because that leads me to believe that the decision making is perhaps not great.
I also talked to a team the other day who thinks that we're kind of on the right track with being high on Trevor Wong. So that gave me a little bit of solace in our idea that Wong is not actually just a 14-point scorer who's 5'8" and 95 pounds.
Let's do it, then. Let's go
Wong, Sasha,
Sasha, and Leroux.
All right, 2 more spots.
Do we do Dylan Duke next?
I like Duke.
I don't see it at all.
Well,
Oh, have you tried watching the games, David?
No, it just close my eyes like this.
Duke and Reynolds to finish it off, I think, because like we've kind of dropped Reynolds quite a bit.
I like Reynolds.
I think I like Dean more.
Yeah, and that was that's my next fantasy. Yeah, I like Dean more. Even if he's not scoring, I think his skating posture, his handling, his manipulation skills is more projectable. Reynolds is a great defensive player. He connects plays. He can find open spaces, but he plays with a weird long stick, and I don't think he's all that skilled compared to Dean. Even if more of his game translates, even his games translate easier to pro level, I like Dean's upside a bit more.
So does that mean it's Dean Reynolds then?
We could have
Unless, Joey, how do you
Mastro.
feel about Duke?
I had Dylan Duke a little bit lower. I think obviously he's tremendously skilled, but I had him kind of. I thought him and like Coronado were kind of my next 2 forwards. I had kind of a smattering of defensemen next. I don't think I'm gonna find a lot of love for Hershuk here, so I won't bring that name up. Not that
No.
I particularly care. I don't care for him. I just think he's maybe him or Barons is probably the next defenseman up in my region. But I had Duke a little bit lower, even though I really like the skill and the offensive ability. I just think there's some. He plays bigger than his size, but there's some issues with strength, and he can get neutralized pretty easily in some of the college games I saw.
I think also we were having
Definitely
this in the
behind
group chat last night, but Ethan Del Mastro potentially like right at the end here. I know both Lauren and I have him rated as a B. Potentially like his future value scores, we were maybe a bit harsh, but kind of what we were alluding to yesterday, I do see a lot of Thomas Harley in Ethan Del Mastro. And I think that perhaps he's getting ridden a little bit harder than maybe he deserves. And so for me, like, I think if he's not kind of at 32, then I have him like he should be in the top 35. Like, I think that projecting anytime like you can compare someone legitimately to Thomas Harley, and the more that I watch him, I'm kind of with Cam on that one. The more that I see it, Thomas Harley is a hell of a defenseman.
Yeah, I watched a bit of Del Mastro, and he also reminds me of Thomas Harley. His decision making is a bit sketchy sometimes, and his defensive gap is really something to work on. But he's 6'3", he's probably average to above average skater, and I like his puck moving. He makes some great look-offs, and he really uses his eyes when he on regroups. So we'll look at one option and just hit a player across the ice, and I really like that when defenseman can do that. And we're still watching his D-1 season, so I think all of his game will take a step forward whenever the OHL starts. I hope to see some improvement on the defensive side, because I think it's really bad for right now, especially in zone. If he's really susceptible to manipulation. So if an attacker makes any kind of move, he really falls easily and overreaches. He can't angle, but again, he has the tools, and he's pretty bold and confident, and the puck moving skills too. So I like Sean Behrens too, and Peter Reynolds. So anyone with me is fine.
Are we going to drop Corson Suleiman solo, and are we going to drop Daniil Chayka solo?
Daniil Chayka probably doesn't even deserve to go in the second round. Like, every game I've watched of him, I'm like, can you make one good decision? Just like one.
Like, really, honestly, he just stands there in the defensive zone. He has long reach. He can skate well. He doesn't gap anything. He just stands there. And I watched his NHL game. He's supposed to dominate as a player with OHL experience, and he doesn't do it.
I really liked Chayka last year.
Yeah,
sorry.
I thought he sucked in the OHL. The only thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause is that I didn't hate Chayka at the World Junior A Challenge. I know JD really loved him there. I thought he was pretty good. But otherwise with him, it's just a lot of poor decisions, a lot of unused assets. There's not much there. I wrote a couple game reports on him earlier this year, and most of them were just like, oh, he was not totally terrible this game. What a welcome change for this defenseman. And then the other one was, oh, that was just disaster. And I don't see it.
I think he's a pick, like probably at the end of our board or something, but not right now. I'd rather have Del Mastro.
It's a little bit concerning too that he's gone back to Russia and he's playing in the MHL and he's just like coasting. It's the MHL, dude. If you take one stride, you are past all of those like 5'6" forwards who can't skate properly. Like, just take one stride, please. Care. No.
So Daniil Chayka is not going to 32. Who is? Is it going to be Dean or Del Mastro? That's what I'm hearing. Or sorry, is it going to be Reynolds or Del Mastro? My apology.
I've seen both. I take Del Mastro, but it's really close.
All right, it's Del Mastro. We're done.
Cool, because there's football on. And so thank you very much for your time. Love and appreciate it. Fantastic work. We're going to release this on Wednesday so I can get some viewings in so that my write-up isn't terrible. All that fun stuff. And I don't know, just stay tuned.